In a forest clearing, a horned figure stands over a fallen hero, prompting a panicked retreat. Amidst the chaos, a young gate guard named Modi remains calm, observing the scene. An older guard shouts at him, questioning his presence and urging him to flee, but Modi internally notes that the main story hasn't even begun. This is the tale of a background soldier who, using his knowledge from a past life, became the strongest while hiding his true power. In a flash of motion, he dispatches a foe with ease, though he inwardly dismisses the display, believing it won't matter in the long run. His thoughts drift to the world he now inhabits, the world of the RPG Brave of Asterisk, or Brias. He recalls how players take on the role of the hero, Alan, to fight demons, and can even forge powerful bonds with friends. It was a game he was obsessed with before he was reincarnated. He remembers his previous life as a man named Silva, who died from overwork at an exploitative company. He considers himself lucky to have been reborn into his beloved game world, now living a simple life as a gate guard in the capital city, Silencia. His reverie is broken when his senior colleague, an older guard, tells him it's time to switch shifts. As Modi agrees, the guard reminds him to pick something up for him. Modi reflects that while he didn't get to be the hero, Alan, this new life is not bad at all. Walking through the bustling city streets, he appreciates his current lifestyle. He gets paid even if he slacks off, a stark contrast to his previous life. To him, it feels like heaven. He approaches a stall and orders as usual. His peaceful walk is interrupted as he spots a merchant aggressively pitching a sword to a young noblewoman, insisting it's a high-quality weapon that would be a perfect fit for her, offered at a cheap price. The woman politely declines, stating she is not a swordswoman, but Modi's world stops. He recognizes her instantly as Charles Orland, an important character from the game who becomes a friend early on. A wave of excitement hits him as he realizes he's seeing his favorite character in person. As the merchant doubles down, claiming the weapon is a holy sword blessed by the fairy king that can make anyone strong, Modi internally scoffs. He knows the man is lying and silently warns Charlie not to be fooled, though he admits her naive side is quite cute. His cynicism melts away into pure joy. Seeing Charles Orland in the flesh, so adorable and real, fills him with overwhelming gratitude. He thanks God for his reincarnation, feeling that dying was worth it just for this moment. From his post, Modi watches as a woman in a cloak calls out for Charles to wait as she walks away through the crowded street. He continues to observe as another figure, a young man with dark hair, appears. Charles confronts the merchant about the fake sword, then turns in surprise, calling out the newcomer's name, Alan. Modi recognizes him instantly as the protagonist of Brave of Asterisk, the player's avatar. Seeing the two of them together feels strange, as Modi knows that Alan is fated to become Charles's lover. The group begins to move. Alan offers to escort Charles to the castle gate, since she is on her way to collect herbs, and she shyly agrees. Watching them walk off together, Modi is overcome with a sense of gloom, muttering her name under his breath. His gloomy reverie is broken by the merchant, who approaches him directly. The man urges Modi not to believe what Charles said and makes a new offer. He'll sell him the sword for cheap. The merchant presses on with his sales pitch, claiming that with this sword, even an ordinary person can become a hero. Unimpressed, Modi reaches out and taps the blade with his finger, producing a dull clink. He calmly rejects the offer. With a placid smile, he explains that as a simple gate guard, a regular sword is more than sufficient for his needs. He turns his back on the merchant and walks away. The merchant, baffled, mutters about what a strange fellow he is and resolves to try selling the sword to someone else. As he departs, an image of Alan fills his mind, reaching out as if towards a grand destiny. Modi's own resolve is clear in his thoughts. He is not the hero. He is nothing more than a background character. His mind drifts back to his previous life. He recalls being swamped with work, and how playing Brias was the sole thing he could enjoy. This memory solidifies his desire to remain a simple observer in this new world. He reflected on the world of the game, admitting to himself that while all the characters were charming, Charlie was his absolute favorite. If everything went according to the original scenario, the hero Alan and his comrades would save the world from the demon threat and bring peace. His eyes widened with genuine excitement. He wanted to see that epic story come true with his own eyes. To do so, he had to survive. This was a dangerous world where demons constantly attacked humans, so getting strong was essential. He decided to utilize his game knowledge for this purpose, falling back on his old RPG strategy, get to the maximum level in the early stages to ensure an effective and safe path forward. He clarified in his own mind that this didn't mean he wanted to replace Alan. Using his foreknowledge, he would simply find a suitable place to practice for many years and raise his status to the maximum. He was, after all, someone who always respected the source material. He would never forgive anyone who changed the original story, even himself. For him, just watching the scenario play out from a safe distance was more than enough. His internal monologue was interrupted by a senior guard greeting him. With a brightened expression, Modi clasped his hands together, declaring that original works were the best. The other guard looked on, completely baffled, and asked what he was even talking about. The senior guard, though confused, laughed it off and invited him for a drink after their shift. Modi eagerly accepted, exclaiming that nothing beats a beer after work. His colleague chuckled, noting his excitement and asking if something good had happened to him. Their lighthearted exchange was cut short by a sudden cry for help. Modi turned, wondering what was happening. In the courtyard below, a monstrous spider-like demon with a pale, humanoid torso hissed, its presence radiating pure menace. As his fellow guards rushed toward the chaos, Modi stood frozen, wondering aloud what demons were doing there. The senior guard, Silva, asked him what was wrong, but Modi dismissed it as nothing. Internally, however, a name surfaced in his mind: the Wedge Day. His mind raced, recalling the specifics of the event from the game. The Wedge Day was a monthly occurrence that served as a prelude to the main story. During this event, demons, who normally never worked together, would coordinate an attack on the kingdom. The hero always swiftly exterminated them, resulting in no significant damage. He watched as a senior officer, Silva, barked orders at the other guards. Silva commanded them to close ranks and hold their position, reassuring them that they only needed to buy time until the hero arrived. The creature lunged forward, and he calmly assessed it. It was only a level 1 demon, not particularly strong. However, he knew it was still not weak enough for a regular soldier to defeat. As if to prove his point, the other guards, including Silva, struggled to land a decisive blow against the demon's flurry of attacks. He considered that taking the demon out himself wouldn't be that hard, but he was loath to drastically alter the scenario. He resolved to simply do his duty as a gate guard and help hold it off. His thoughts were interrupted as Silva was struck, the senior guard crying out in pain and wondering aloud when the hero would finally arrive. The cry of pain spurred him to action. He turned, calling out to Modi to see if he was all right. The senior guard waved him off, claiming it was just a graze. Suddenly, another guard, a young man named Silva, roared with fury, demanding how the demon dared to hurt Modi. At his shout, the creature shrieked and fled. Puzzled, the senior guard watched the young man give chase, wondering to himself if his subordinate had always been that fast on his feet. Far from the city's chaos, Alan's female companion rested by a peaceful stream, her bare feet dangling in the cool water as birds chirped nearby. She pulled on her boot, deciding she was finished collecting herbs for the day. It was time to regroup with Alan. As she prepared to stand, a sudden rustling from the nearby bushes caught her ear as she turned her head with a questioning look. She stood, peering into the dark foliage with caution. "Is someone there?" she called out into the silence. Elsewhere, Alan raced through the forest, tracking a creature of incredible speed. He considered his options, wondering if he should try to cripple it by cutting off one of its legs. His pursuit came to an abrupt halt as his eyes widened in shock. He had spotted someone standing just ahead in a clearing. To his disbelief, it was Charlie. He couldn't fathom what she was doing out here alone. His mind raced as he tried to compose himself. This was wrong. According to the game's events, Charlie wasn't supposed to be here. A wave of panic washed over him as he reminded himself that it would be okay, that she was not fated to die. Just as the thought crossed his mind, a monstrous, dark-skinned figure with long white hair materialized behind the unsuspecting Charlie, raising a clawed hand to strike. She let out a terrified scream as Alan drew his sword, roaring at the beast not to lay a hand on her. He lunged forward, unleashing a powerful technique he identified as Zalencia's sword style, spinning top. His blade carved through the demon's torso in a whirlwind of steel. With the threat neutralized, the demon's body lay motionless on the forest floor. Alan calmly sheathed his sword as Charlie, now safe, watched him with a hand covering her mouth in relieved disbelief. He then turned his head, his gaze shifting back towards her. Her eyes met his, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she looked at her rescuer. Breaking the silence, he rushed to her side, his voice filled with concern as he frantically asked if she was all right and if the demon had injured her. She quietly reassured him that she was okay. He stands frozen, the shock of his own actions washing over him. He realizes with a jolt that he has just intervened, muttering in disbelief at what he has done. His panicked thoughts are interrupted by a young woman who steps forward, asking who he is. Flustered, he blurts out that he is merely a gate guard. With a gentle smile, she clarifies that she wasn't asking about his job. She wants to know his name. She leans in closer, her expression earnest as she implores him to please tell her his name. He seems taken aback by her directness, a blush rising to his own cheeks. Overwhelmed, he finally stammers out a name. Silva. The girl's face lights up with delight, and she thanks him warmly. Internally, he grapples with the realization that his life, the scenario he thought he knew, has begun to veer in a completely unexpected direction. After making contact with Charlie, a young guard named Silva suddenly realizes he has duty to attend to and hastily excuses himself, leaving his surprised companion behind in the castle courtyard. He clutches his head in a panic, realizing he had no choice but to defeat a demon in front of her, an act he fears might have influenced the plot in some way. His anxious thoughts are interrupted when a senior guard calls out his name. Turning, he learns from the senior guard that he has a direct summons from the captain of the elite Holy Guard and must report to their headquarters immediately. Silva is stunned by the news. The older man smirks, admitting he doesn't know what kind of screw-up Silva has committed, but grimly jokes that he will take care of his funeral. He then laughs it off, saying he hopes Silva just gets an earful, while also warning that the captain of the elite Holy Knights Order is known to be extremely stern. A nervous Silva asks him to stop saying such ill-omened things. Their destination is the imposing fortress that serves as the headquarters for the elite Holy Knights Order. Inside the stone corridors, Guards confirm that everything is in order and escort Silva deeper into the building. As he walks, Silva looks up toward a high window, sweating with anxiety. He resolves to do everything in his power to avoid meeting a certain person he refers to as her. Meanwhile, in an office elsewhere in the headquarters, a female knight with long, light-colored hair tied in a ponytail stands reading a report. Her eyes widen in shock as she focuses on the document, which contains a crude but unmistakable drawing of a demon. She pressed her gloved hands against the window, her face alight with an almost childlike excitement as she looked out. As the door to her office rattled open, she turned to greet the man who entered. "You've done well to come, Silva," she exclaimed. He, in turn, was immediately struck by her features: lustrous silver hair, blue eyes as deep as the ocean, and a physique he recognized as one of the most prominent in the game. He knew her instantly. This was Elda Snow White, the captain of the elite Knights Order and a conquerable love interest in the world of Brias. His stunned silence seemed to annoy her, as she pouted and called him a thick-headed guy. Cutting through the awkward moment, Silva formally asked the captain why she had summoned him. She leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. A bad feeling washed over Silva. He suspected that Elda somehow knew about his true abilities, and that was why she had called him here. Her next words confirmed his worst fears. Leaning forward with an intense, knowing gaze, she asked him directly, "You're the one who took out the demon, right?" The question made him flinch. He tried to feign ignorance, asking what she could possibly mean. Elda clarified that she was talking about the demon attack from the other day, explaining that a report had come in about a demon's corpse being found completely ripped apart. She continued, a sly smile playing on her lips. The demon, she revealed, had traces of being felled by a spinning top technique. Excluding the hero, the only person capable of such a feat was the captain of the Holy Knights Order, herself. But since she wasn't there, she posed the question, who else could have possibly defeated it? The weight of her logic made him break out in a sweat. Elda pressed her advantage, telling him it was time to face the facts. She insisted that a person with his level of skill should dedicate himself to working as a knight for the good of the country. Desperately searching for an out, he latched on her earlier words. "You said excluding the hero, didn't you?" he countered, suggesting it was more likely the hero's doing. Internally, he panicked, realizing that if he confessed, his peaceful life would be completely ruined. He stood firm as Captain Elda Snow White continued her argument. She pointed out that while the hero is duty-bound to report all demon suppressions, the identity of the one who defeated the spider demon remains unknown. Leaning forward, she urged him to accept his situation and join the Knights Order. He refused outright, declaring that he would not stand for it. She called him naive, but he shot back, demanding to see her proof. His defiance left her momentarily stunned, as she shouted in disbelief that he still refused to admit the truth. Her shock gave way to genuine confusion. Slumping over a table, she asked why he was so vehemently against joining the Knights Order. She explained the benefits: a handsome wage and numerous other perks from the country, which would far surpass his current earnings. He considered her question, acknowledging that his role would be to support the hero and protect the nation. He admitted to having mixed feelings about such a duty, revealing his primary concern: being forced to undertake missions alongside the hero. He then clarified his thoughts, stating plainly that he had no intention of becoming a knight because he did not want to get close to the main characters. Elda overheard this peculiar phrase and questioned what he meant. Her confusion was evident. After a moment, her expression hardened with resolve. She declared a shame, but now that things had come to this, she could no longer afford to be picky about her methods. The armored knight, Captain, cheerfully presents a letter of admission to the young man, complete with his portrait and a signature. Stunned, he stares at the name, Silva, and insists that he never signed such a document. He points accusingly, exclaiming that he never thought she would go so far as to forge his signature. In a darkly gleeful thought, she reminds herself that as the captain of the Knights Order, she can get away with such things. Her demeanor shifts abruptly. Dismissing her previous actions as a joke, she states that she cannot force anyone to join against their will and hands him a rolled-up document. He takes the paper, asking what it is. The captain explains that she will give up on recruiting him, but in exchange, she needs him to do her a favor. Looking at the drawing on the paper, he asks who the person is. She identifies the man as Brajo Bertoli, an applicant who intends to take the entrance trials for the Knights Order. With a severe expression, she makes a request clear. She wants him to stop Brajo from joining. He recognizes the name, noting that the Bertolis are an incredibly famous family. The captain confirms this, but adds with disdain that Brajo himself is an irredeemable scumbag. She explains the complication. Because Brajo is a noble, she can't simply fail him without risking pressure from the higher-ups. Pointing at the young man, she declares that this is where he comes in. He realizes she intends to use him for sabotage. The captain lays out her plan. She will arrange for him to fight Brajo in a mock battle during the entrance trials. His mission is to defeat Brajo decisively, proving to everyone that he is unfit to be a knight. He considers the offer, then asks for clarification. If he performs this favor for her, he wants to be certain that she will truly stop trying to recruit him into the Knights Order. She beams, her expression bright and confident. "Of course," she replies, assuring him that she is counting on him to succeed. The stone towers of the royal castle stand under a clear sky, a bastion of the kingdom's authority. Within its walls, Alan walks with a gloomy expression, weighed down by the thought of the bothersome job he has just accepted. He internally laments that Brajo is a character who doesn't appear in the established course of events he knows. Yet, the man still has connections with the Knight's Order, meaning any mistake on Alan's part could have unforeseen consequences on the plot. His thoughts sharpen with concern. Because Brajo is an unknown variable, he has almost no information about him. He concludes that gathering intelligence is his first priority. He resolves to keep his contact with the main characters to an absolute minimum, determined not to make another mistake. As he steels himself, a sudden tap on his shoulder breaks his concentration. He turns, shocked, to find the uniformed girl he had previously saved. She looks at him with a gentle expression and asks a single question. Silva. He panics, grabbing her shoulders and insisting she shouldn't be meeting with him. Realizing his overreaction, he quickly changes his tune, claiming he's happy to see her and explaining that he just met with Charlie, which solidified his resolve. She doesn't seem convinced, reminding him that he ran away right after saving her. She tells him she has been looking for him ever since. He awkwardly explains that he had some pressing matters to attend to. He finally relents, covering his face with his hand in shame. He offers a sincere apology for leaving so abruptly without saying a word. She quietly considers his apology. She then points a finger at him, her expression turning serious. By the way, she begins, why do you know my name, Silva? The question catches him completely off guard, and a nervous twitch runs through him. He was racked with feelings of guilt over the lie he told Charlie. As his mind raced, the girl, Silva, explained how she knew he would be there. She had been asked to guard some nobles at a party and happened to see the list of attendees. He could only manage a simple, stammered "oh okay" in response. Seeing his subdued reaction, she puffed out her cheeks in a slight pout, clearly not satisfied with letting the matter go. She insisted that he didn't need to be so uptight or polite with her, as she wanted to thank him for what he'd done. Alan, however, tried to brush it off, stating that he was simply doing his duty as a soldier. His dismissal did nothing to deter her. With unwavering seriousness, she insisted she would do anything for him, even help with his work. The intensity of her offer stunned him. A sudden, firm resolve took hold. He felt it was his duty to grant the wish of a character he admired. With a thud of determination, he mumbled, asking for her help. He then clarified his request. He was conducting an investigation and asked if she would mind tagging along. With a relieved and genuine smile, he confirmed his decision. All right. In the capital city of Zalencia, two figures arrive in the bustling red light district. This area is known to be frequented by members of the Bertoli family, one of the most prominent noble houses in the country. As they walk, Alan explains to his companion what he has learned. Due to the family's popularity, it was easy to gather information. However, dark rumors circulate about them, suggesting involvement in human trafficking and illegal drugs. They've apparently given a huge sum of money to the royal family, which has earned them significant leverage. She glances at him with a slight blush as other people on the street stare at the two of them. He notices her distraction and asks what's wrong, addressing her as Charles. He then adds that, according to the information he received, their destination should be somewhere in this area. Her face flushes as she covers her mouth. Thinking his name, Silva, she wonders to herself just where he plans on taking her in such a place. Her companion expresses his hope that they find the man they're looking for, Brajo, soon. With a small giggle, she admits she was just kidding, which provokes a shocked and flustered reaction from him as he realizes he misunderstood. The man they seek, Brajo, is indeed a wastrel. As it turns out, he spends his days squandering his parents' money on alcohol and wandering the streets in a drunken stupor. Having confirmed the rumors, the pair continue their search down a less crowded street. Alan wonders aloud where Brajo usually stays. She confirms that he is in the red light district, but speculates that they might have arrived a bit too early to find him. At that moment, a loud growl erupts from Alan's stomach. His embarrassment is palpable as he thinks how mortifying it is for his stomach to growl in front of his favorite person. He apologizes and asks Charles if she is hungry and would like to get something to eat. He agrees that finding a restaurant is a good idea, admitting he's starving as well. Before he can suggest a place, Silva points forward, having caught an appetizing scent. She suggests they investigate the source. Moments later, inside the establishment, she takes a large, enthusiastic bite of a hamburger. Watching her, he recalls reading something about this. It's unexpected that someone from a noble family would love hamburgers so much. She laments that it's a shame she can never get a proper bite, a recurring frustration for her. He observes that it can't be helped, given her small hands and mouth, and finds that her sadness strangely makes him feel sad as well. She looks down at her meal, conceding that it's not all bad, since she still gets to eat the bun. As she nibbles delicately at the food, he has a realization. This must be how Charlie normally eats hamburgers. The sight is so overwhelmingly adorable that he feels he could pass on to the afterlife from sheer cuteness. After finishing their meal, Silva asks where he plans to search next, reminding him that it's already getting late. He explains that because the red light district becomes dangerous at night, he intends to continue the investigation alone. His sentence is cut short by a loud bang on the door and an aggressive shout from outside. The door bursts open, revealing a menacing group of armored men led by Brajo Bertoli himself. With a sneer, he demands to know if there are any spare tables on the second floor. He had a reputation for causing trouble. Just the other day, he'd snapped, complaining that the food was taking too long and had thrown a glass. He was also known for forcing himself on girls and flirting with them. His arrogance was on full display now as he bellowed at the staff, questioning how they could possibly have no spare tables. He declared that his very presence, Brajo Bertolli's presence, was a blessing to their restaurant, while the staff tried to explain that they were simply full. He dismissed their explanation entirely, demanding they give him a break and simply make a table for him if none were available. He invoked his father's name, trying to intimidate the cowering staff member who could only offer apologies. Watching the scene unfold from their table, Alan confirmed his suspicions. He turned to Silva, remarking that the man was an utter dirtbag, just as the rumors had suggested. The nobleman, disgusted, sneered at the staff on the floor, calling them useless trash. He announced he would forget about it and find another restaurant. But as he turned to leave, his eyes fell upon their table. Silva looked up, questioning his sudden pause with a simple "oh." A slow, unpleasant smile spread across his face. Well, he began, his voice dripping with insincere charm. "Could it be that you are?" He leaned in closer, addressing her directly as Miss Charles Orland. Alan watched him, his expression hardening. He gestured grandly, trying to act familiar. He urged her not to be so cold, claiming they had met at a noble's party just the other day. Silva, however, looked back at him blankly, asking if they had met before. Her lack of recognition sent a shockwave of fury through him. His face contorted with rage as he processed her words. Silva closed her eyes, concentrating, before admitting that she simply didn't remember. Her eyes then opened wide, a bead of sweat on her brow, as if realizing the potential danger of her statement. His face twists into a grotesque sneer, fury burning in his eyes. He clenches a fist, his voice low and menacing as he addresses her. If her memory is truly so poor, he promises to take his time and ensure she never forgets him again. Inside a tavern, the nobleman Brajo Bertolli leans towards Charlie Orland with an unsettling smile. He praises her beauty, claiming it's renowned in high society, and suggests they leave the dingy establishment for a high-class restaurant. His stated intention is to get closer to her, an offer that leaves Charlie looking surprised. Observing the exchange, Silva grits his teeth, finding the man's shamelessness unforgivable. Charlie, however, remains unfazed, closing her eyes and stating plainly that she is not interested. She repeats her disinterest, but Brajo persists, offering to treat her to exquisite food, liquor, and luxurious fruit juices. With a sigh of frustration, Charlie dismisses the new offer, explaining that she is not yet of drinking age. His advance is rebuffed, Brajo's expression sours. His eyes narrow into a contemptuous glare as he mutters under his breath, calling her a wench. His attention shifts to Silva, pointing at him and demanding to know if he's Charlie's bodyguard. Silva confirms that he is, indeed, Lady Charles Orland's bodyguard, believing the declaration will give him the justification needed to protect her from any further harassment. But on the spot, Charlie appears slightly flustered, but she quickly composes herself and affirms that Silva is her guard. As Brajo takes this in, Silva's face twists into a menacing grin, briefly entertaining the thought of cutting the nobleman's head off. The threat is lost on Brajo, who erupts into loud, mocking laughter at the absurd idea that a common-faced nobody could be a bodyguard for a noble. His laughter subsiding, Brajo condescendingly asks if Charlie's family is suffering from a lack of manpower, offering to lend her one of his own bodyguards. Standing behind her, Silva feels a pang of guilt, realizing his presence has inadvertently caused Charlie to be publicly humiliated. With a flourish, Brajo presents his own entourage of 4 intimidating men. He boasts that they're all elite bodyguards, former knights of the Holy Knights Order handpicked by his family, and asks if they don't look the part. Having endured enough, Charlie turns to leave, telling Silva it's time to go. As he follows, Silva's expression is one of pure disgust. He cannot fathom how former members of the esteemed Holy Knights Order could sell themselves out to serve someone so pathetic. As the confrontation with Brajo Bertolli continues, he laughs maniacally, telling Charlie Orland she seems to be mistaken about something. He mockingly wishes her a safe return to her mansion with her wimpy-looking bodyguard. In response, Charlie smiles with unwavering confidence. She raises a finger and coolly informs Brajo that his bodyguards can't even hold a candle to Silva. Sometime later, as the group walks away, Charlie apologizes to Silva, admitting that she got angry on his behalf when the others made fun of him. Surprised, he replies that he never imagined she would do that and feels blessed. However, his tone shifts as he cautions that provoking them might have been a bad idea, before asking if she needs something from them. Before she can answer, Brajo's bodyguards block their path in an alleyway. One of them declares their intention to put her earlier boast to the test. Internally, Silva recognizes this as the perfect opportunity to gather information and determine if Brajo is a character significant enough to affect the plot. Hearing their threat, Charlie glances towards Silva, her expression filled with concern. He meets her worried gaze calmly and turns back to the guards, accepting their challenge. The men grin, pleased by his response. In an instant, the sound of cracking bones fills the air as the guards cry out in agony. With the fight already decided, Silva demands they tell him about all of Brajo's wrongdoings. Overcome with fear, they immediately agree to confess everything. The 4 imposing bodyguards now lie in a defeated, tangled heap on the alley floor. As one of the guards begins to list his master's crimes, Silva is visibly shocked. Brajo is involved in selling counterfeit drugs, blackmail, and physical assault. The sweating guard then adds that this isn't even the full extent of it, confirming that Brajo is a complete scumbag. In a darkened alley, one of Brajo's men holds Alan by the collar, revealing his master's sinister plot. Once Brajo passes the entrance trials and joins the Knight's Order, he intends to uncover compromising information on the captain to seize complete control. Alan processes the gravity of the situation. Brajo's ambition to make the Order directly answerable to him would not only endanger the townspeople, but also allow corruption to fester throughout the country. He realizes he must intervene to stop the plot from straying from its natural course. Having swiftly dealt with the threat, he stands over the defeated bodyguards. He tells them he won't report their loss, instructing them to return to their master with a fabricated story of being easily defeated and to keep silent about what truly transpired. As he stands in the aftermath, Charlie approaches, addressing him as Silva. She remarks that his power is beyond that of any regular soldier, questioning how he became strong enough to wipe out a demon so easily. He flashes a cheerful smile, attributing his strength to tough training. He explains that he spent many years hiding out and training in the mountains. He elaborates that it was a place teeming with monsters, where he nearly died every day, but it was this constant struggle that forged his strength. When Charlie asks if she could become strong the same way, he quickly advises her against such dangerous methods. He reassures her with absolute confidence, betting his life that she will grow stronger without resorting to such extremes. Trusting his words, Charlie's expression softens with belief in him. With the confrontation over, he turns to her and announces that he's hungry, suggesting they find somewhere to eat. Charlie playfully asks if he's treating. Later that night, her voice rings with enthusiasm as she declares that of course he is, because all nerds are duty-bound to treat their favorites. The day of the entrance trials to join the Knight's Order arrives. An official announces the commencement of the 127th trials, with the first exam being a mock battle. Participants will be paired by lottery for one-on-one fights. Amid the crowd, Alan's expression is one of pure determination. He must stop Brajo's plan at all costs. He stands among the other applicants for the Knight's Order trials when a familiar, arrogant voice calls out. It's Brajo, recognizing him as the dull-looking bodyguard from before. Alan calmly greets him, feigning surprise at their reunion. The nobleman sneers, revealing that his bodyguards had reported their encounter. He had expected Alan to have been thoroughly beaten as a lesson to never oppose him again, but notes that he doesn't look injured. Alan coolly replies that he could say the same thing about Brajo. He then explains his unblemished appearance, mentioning that he went to a church and purchased a healing potion, though it cost him quite a bit. A smirk plays on his lips as he inwardly mocks the idea that Brajo would struggle to afford such an item. Brajo scoffs at the mention of a mere healing potion, dismissing it as something for a commoner. He loudly boasts about his own top-shelf armor, which sparkles as he presents it, declaring it's forged from the extremely rare orichalcum. Just then, an official's voice cuts through the air, summoning both Brajo, Bertoli, and Silva to the center of the training grounds. The realization that they are to be opponents sends Brajo into a fit of derisive laughter. He bellows about what an unlucky fellow Alan is, but Alan simply offers a calm, polite agreement. As they prepare, Brajo turns to the trial examiner and casually inquires about the penalty for killing an opponent. The examiner flatly informs him it would result in immediate disqualification. With a click of his tongue, Brajo expresses his disappointment, but seems to accept the rule. His brief inquiry concluded, a vicious grin spreads across his face. Well then, he snarls, before lunging forward with a battle cry. In response to the charge, Alan makes a subtle, swift motion. A flick of his wrist sends a small object striking Brajo's hand, forcing him to drop his sword with a clatter. Brajo stares in disbelief as Alan nonchalantly suggests his hand must have slipped. Internally, Alan reflects that a full power strike would have been lethal, while a weaker one would have shattered his own blade against the superior armor. He coolly asks his disarmed opponent if he still intends to attack. Flustered, Brajo scrambles for an excuse, claiming he only dropped his weapon because he initiated the attack. He declares a self-imposed handicap and offers Alan the first move. Alan smirks, proposing to attack Brajo in the same manner the nobleman had originally intended. He accepts the offer. With a confident smile, he explains that Brajo's arm is now numb, rendering him unable to even swing his sword. Before the nobleman can process this, Alan closes the distance and strikes him with a powerful blow, sending him hurtling across the training grounds. He watches as his opponent scrambles on the ground, insisting that he merely tripped. Alan calmly notes that it certainly looks that way. His opponent, however, is seething with rage. Brajo declares that he has yet to unleash his full power, dismissing Alan's success as a series of lucky strokes. He angrily questions if Alan understands the situation. In response to the threat, Brajo's sword begins to gleam with a powerful light. He announces his intention to end the fight with a move he had hoped to save, but Alan, standing calmly across the arena, simply accepts the challenge. He then channels his own power, causing his own blade to glow with a faint light. This is the technique known as magic enhancement. Magic is, in essence, one's inner mental energy. By channeling this energy to envelop the body, a person can become as durable as steel. If that same energy is used to clad a sword, the blade becomes sharp enough to slice through iron as if it were butter. This power is what separates heroes from ordinary people. Demons, the natural enemies of humanity, possess bodies far sturdier than any humans. To stand against them and become a hero, one must be able to manipulate magic freely. Yet, this is a rare gift. The vast majority of people live their entire lives without ever sensing the flow of magic within them. Alan confronts his opponent, identifying the man's armor as being made of orichalcum. He notes that without their own enhancements, they would be no match for such equipment. The armored man, Brajo, is visibly shaken by the sudden, overwhelming pressure emanating from Alan, stammering as he questions his intentions. He smirks, reminding Sir Brajo that a duel cannot be won without launching an attack, making it clear that he intends to be the one to strike first. In response, Brajo points a trembling finger, shouting that he finally understands. He accuses Alan of being a mercenary hired by a group of bottom-feeder nobles for a paltry sum. The insult causes Alan's expression to harden. He confirms that Brajo is speaking about Charles. The noble recoils, unnerved by Alan's transformation into what feels like a completely different person. The sheer killing intent in Alan's eyes terrifies Brajo. In a desperate panic, he changes tactics, offering to hire Alan himself with his own money. He continues his plea, promising vast sums of money, far more than that woman could ever pay, and even offers women if Alan will just yield. But Alan remains unmoved, coldly asking if he is ready and warning him not to move if he values his life. As Brajo continues, promising women even finer than Charles, Alan's patience snaps. He roars for him to shut up, forbidding him from ever speaking her name again. Brajo freezes, sweating with fear. With that, he lunges forward, unleashing a powerful technique, Zalencia's sword style. White waterfall. His blade arcs through the air in a swift, decisive motion. The attack lands with a sharp clang. Brajo stares down in utter disbelief as a clean cut appears across his chest plate, the metal separating with a soft clink. The severed pieces of his armor fall to the ground with a thud. He cries out, unable to comprehend how his armor, forged from orichalcum, could have possibly been cut. He slumped to the ground, his prized armor shattered, and stammered his surrender. Standing over the defeated noble, Alan confirmed the yield. With the duel won, he let out a quiet sigh of relief, thinking his mission was now complete. All that remained was to report back to Elda. His victory did not go unnoticed. From his stands, Captain Elda watched with a faint, pleased smile, acknowledging his win. Elsewhere in the crowd, a guard stared in stunned silence, barely able to utter the name Silva as he processed the unbelievable display. The initial shock in the arena quickly gave way to a rising murmur of chatter among the spectators. Standing alone in the center of the ring, Alan's relief vanished, replaced by a sudden sense of dread as he realized everyone was now focused on it. He understood his mistake immediately. In his effort to complete the mission, he might have drawn far too much attention to himself. Inside her office, Captain Elda Snow White sits at her desk, expressing her gratitude. Thanks to the recent events, they have successfully prevented Brajo from joining the Knight's Order. Standing before her, Alan listens as she continues. She declares Brajo's actions unforgivable and vows that they will gather solid proof of his vicious deeds to ensure he is thrown into jail, thanking Alan once more for his help. With a confident expression, Alan assures the captain that he is counting on her. Elda, in turn, reminds him of their promise, stating it's time to make Brajo pay for insulting Charlie. As he turns to leave, the captain informs him that, because he helped ensure Brajo's failure, she will no longer invite him to join the Knight's Order. He turns back with a wide, relieved smile, genuinely appreciating her decision. He celebrates the fact that his peaceful days will finally return. Elda looks on, surprised, realizing he is being completely serious. Her surprise quickly morphs into disbelief as tears well up in her eyes. She presses him, asking if he is absolutely, positively sure. Alan confirms without hesitation that he is. Suddenly, she erupts, slamming her fist on the desk in a full-blown tantrum. She demands to know why, shouting that she wants him by her side and that he should work for her as a knight. Alan is taken aback, protesting that this is different from what she had promised. He watches her cry, thinking to himself that he hadn't anticipated a spoiled brat Elda event. Resigning himself to the situation, he remembers his promises and offers her a handkerchief. Sniffling, she accepts the cloth, promising to wash it and give it back. As she sobs, she grabs his arm and pleads with him to at least continue to do his job while as a gate guard. Leaving the building, Alan decides he will lay low for the time being. From a distance, two guards watch him go, remarking that he looks like an ordinary person, completely different from the rumors they've heard. He overhears two guards discussing yet another demon sighting, the third this month. The news leaves him with a look of quiet concern. As he walks through the city, he reflects on the troubling increase in demon activity, wondering if it has something to do with the main story that is about to begin. The weight of it all settles on him. He sits down, dejected, lamenting that he has drawn attention to himself and hoping it won't affect the plot in any way. He continues to ponder the situation, reasoning that since Alan is the protagonist, a happy ending is supposed to be guaranteed for this world. Suddenly, a loud slam echoes from nearby, startling him. He turns toward the sound, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. A sudden realization flashes through his mind as a figure lands powerfully before him. He thinks, "Hold up, don't tell me." As the newcomer smiles down at him, the dust settles to reveal a woman in ornate robes, a massive weapon sheathed on her back. She announces his presence, then introduces herself as the special-grade hero, Kagaya, before addressing him directly as Silva. Her appearance immediately causes a stir in the crowd. Onlookers begin to chatter, recognizing the famous and beautiful Lady Kagaya and wondering what business she has there. He tries to sneak away, determined to keep his contact with main characters to a minimum. But her voice stops him cold as she calls out, "Darling," telling him she's been looking for him forever. Before he can react, she closes the distance and wraps her arms around him from behind. She asks where he thinks he's going, leaving his dear wife behind. Trapped, he silently pleads for help. He was forced to listen as Kagaya introduced herself not just as a potential love interest, but as a non-standard being, the sole hero granted the title of special grade. She boasted of her exceptional skill with magic and swords, so great that she had utterly wiped out a level 4 demon, laughing all the while. She was, in her own words, humanity's trump card. The assessment struck him as terrifyingly accurate. She was a true monster. He realized with a sinking feeling that, just like Elda, this woman somehow knew about his true abilities. She continued, explaining that ever since discovering his abilities, she had become fixated on him for some unknown reason. Kagaya declared that fate must have brought them together, confidently stating that Alan was supposed to be her soulmate. He tried to deflect, nervously pointing out that many demons have been appearing lately and suggesting she should prioritize her duties as a hero instead of focusing on it. She leaned closer, dismissing his point entirely. Such matters were of no interest to her, she explained, as being with him was a far more charming prospect. His eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't fathom how someone who called herself a special-grade hero could so readily abandon her responsibilities. He tried to argue logically, stating that he had no memory of them ever becoming a married couple. Kagaya simply floated back, retorting that of course she was allowed to be with him. After all, she was his wife. She pressed on, cheerfully asking when they should hold their wedding ceremony. Alan felt like he was talking to a brick wall, though he had to admit her offer was tempting. Before he could respond, Kagaya suggested they visit an interesting cafe she'd found for some quality time together. Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed his arm and began pulling him away. He shouted in protest, trying one last time to insist that he didn't remember them ever getting married. Meanwhile, at the Holy Knights Order headquarters, a different crisis was unfolding. Captain Elda Snow White stared at a report on her desk, her face etched with frustration. The Holy Knights had failed yet again to capture their target, a being known only as the Cursed Demon. She paced in frustration, clenching her fists. Damn all. Her thoughts fixated on one person, Silva. If only Silva had been with them, she mused, they might have been able to turn the tide. Her pacing stopped as she came to a halt by a large window, gazing out over the city. Her eyes drifted down to a neatly folded piece of cloth resting on the windowsill. She thought about the one who left it. He was a strange guy, she admitted to herself. But even in this difficult situation, she couldn't help but expect him to do something incredible. Her mind flashed back to the chaos of the battlefield. A knight cried out in horror that the hero had been captured. It was the worst possible news. Seeing the overwhelming number of enemies, she had ordered her troops back, vowing to buy them time. She remembered her resolve. Her duty was to keep the damage caused by the demons to a minimum. They had already sent for Kagaya, but now that she was injured, she didn't know how long she could hold out. She had to whittle down their numbers until help arrived. She knew that if they had been mere level 1 demons, she could have defeated them even with her injuries. However, facing level 2 demons was a tall order. A sharp, tearing pain erupted in her side as an enemy attack struck home. A demon's claw impaled her. Gritting her teeth against the agony, her eyes blazed with defiance. She had no intention of sacrificing herself for free. A brilliant light began to glow from the center of her chest plate. Fueled by this power, she lunged, swinging her blade in a wide arc at a hulking, dark-skinned demon. The creature simply grinned and dodged the blow. As it slipped past, she saw with dawning horror that her comrades were right behind it. The demon ignored her completely, launching itself toward the knights who were cowering in fear. Not so fast, she roared, her face a mask of desperation. Her thoughts drifted back to a peculiar man she had encountered during that battle. Amidst the chaos, he was the only one looking directly at the demon. He wasn't wearing the silver armor symbolic of the knights. Instead, he was clad in battered steel armor and simple shoes. He muttered something about not having reached the main part of the story yet, a strange comment that prompted a shocked cry of his name from her. Ignoring her completely, he charged forward, swinging his sword while shouting incomprehensible gibberish. At that moment, she dismissed his actions, thinking his reckless assault would amount to nothing. Yet, the way he looked in that instant was, by far, the most beautiful sight she had ever witnessed among all the knights she had known. Even the powerful demoness observing from above seemed to watch his charge with a confident, knowing smile. Ever since that day, she had incessantly asked him to join the Holy Knights Order. He always refused, sometimes stumbling away in his denial, but she remained persistent. She once grabbed him, looking him in the eye with intensity, convinced that he possessed a power that was meant to protect their world. The next day, her reverie was broken. A knight approached her at the scene of a recent attack, expressing surprise that she had come to investigate personally. He began his report, stating that they had 2 victims. He believed it was the work of a cunning demon, as there were hardly any traces left behind, and suggested that they would need to call upon a hero. She confirmed that she had already made the request for assistance, but explained that since they knew nothing about their target, prioritizing the investigation was paramount. She then instructed him to continue his report. The knight elaborated that both victims were women, found with bite marks where their blood had been drained. The complete lack of other traces confirmed it was a demon, likely level 3 or higher. A grim realization washed over Elda. This was truly awful. She surveyed the grim scene, a pile of lifeless bodies drained of all blood, their forms twisted in their final moments. Her subordinate's voice broke the silence, but she barely heard him, her hand clenching into a tight fist in frustration. Turning her attention to the crisis, she issued a series of urgent commands. The message was to be relayed to all other knights. Gate Guard Silva was to report to the Knights Order HQ immediately. All Holy Knights and soldiers were to be on high alert, and the Scout Regiment was ordered to expand its search range. As armored guards stand by, the hero Kagaya links her arm with Alan's, expressing her excitement for their first task together and calling him darling. Visibly flustered, Alan demands she stop using such phrasing, while the armored female knight looks on from behind them. He internally laments his situation. After a difficult day dealing with Kagaya, following him around, he has now been assigned to investigate the recent demon attack, feeling he has gotten himself into a messy predicament. The scene shifts to several hours earlier, where he was in discussion with the armored female knight. He questions the nature of the culprit, asking if it was a vampire. She quietly confirms his suspicion. She elaborates, explaining that vampire is merely a popular alias being used for the perpetrator behind the demon attack that occurred a few days prior. Continuing her briefing, she reports that there were 2 victims. Their corpses were discovered completely drained of blood and bore distinct bite marks on their necks. Back in the present, Alan is startled as Kagaya snuggles against him, prompting him to wonder what she is doing there. With a confident smile, Kagaya asserts that she does whatever she wishes. The armored female knight glares, pointedly asking if Kagaya's actions have anything to do with Alan. In a sudden movement, she shoves Kagaya away from him, shouting for the lascivious wants to get away. She continues to push her back, repeating her demand. Unfazed, Kagaya calmly points out that she was only linking arms with him. Alan intervenes, telling the captain she is being too uptight and insisting that he is trying to have a serious conversation. Taken aback for a moment, she quickly regains her composure, muttering seriously before declaring that they need to get back on track. The intelligence report on the demon was grim. The culprit was believed to be an evolution of a bloodbath, capable of shape-shifting and possessing a power level of over 3. The armored female knight processed this, noting that a level 3 demon would be a challenge even for skilled knights. She turned to Alan, addressing him as Silva, and declared it was his time to shine. He, however, was modest, claiming he was just a gate guard only capable of errands. She brushed this aside, stating they were short on manpower and that she wouldn't mind if he acted independently, so long as he assisted the investigation. Her offer to let him work alone struck him as odd. He stared at her suspiciously, prompting her to ask about his look. He hesitated before admitting he wanted to ask something first. His gaze intensified as he bluntly asked if she had any ulterior motives. She erupted in a flustered panic, loudly denying any such thing. She then proceeded to accidentally reveal her entire scheme, a great filling up the outer moat plan, where his success in the investigation would build his reputation, making it easier for her to recruit him into the Knight's Order. He listened to her frantic explanation and drily pointed out that she had just revealed every secret part of her plan. He sighed, finally accepting the investigation. He began to explain that while he normally couldn't refuse an order, this was different, but his thought was cut short. Kagaya suddenly appeared, announcing that if Silva was helping, then she would help as well. The knight slammed her hand on the desk in fury, shouting Kagaya's name and protesting that her presence would ruin her plan. Kagaya was unmoved, stating simply that she didn't care and only wanted to be with Silva. She let out a frustrated sigh, ultimately relenting. Acknowledging they needed all the help they could get, she looked at them both and gave her first order. They would attend the investigation meeting to be briefed on the situation. Alan slid the door open, announcing their arrival as he and Kagaya stepped into the briefing room. Kagaya followed close behind, her expression a mask of stern disapproval. Their entrance immediately drew the attention of every knight present. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as they questioned who the unknown man was, identifying him only as a common soldier. They were more perplexed by his companion, recognizing the woman as the special-grade hero, Kagaya. Seated amongst them, Captain Elda kept her eyes closed, listening to the whispers. She internally questioned the strange pairing, acknowledging that this peculiar team was indeed her own command. The two stood isolated in the center of a large briefing hall, surrounded on all sides by the seated knights. The low hum of their collective chatter filled the air, every eye fixed upon the unlikely pair. At a table occupied by a flustered knight, Kagaya asks if she might take a seat. The armored woman quickly agrees, and Kagaya thanks her, settling in. The armored knight chuckles, remarking that they are certainly standing out. She then glances at Alan with a faint blush, correcting herself that he is the one drawing attention. Soon after, they are all gathered around a large table in a briefing room. A senior knight addresses the assembly, officially beginning the investigation meeting regarding the recent vampire attack. He starts by organizing the known facts, They have two victims, both in their 20s, whose corpses were discovered in the northern part of the capital. Another knight curses the wretched demons responsible. As he listens, Alan has a disquieting thought. This specific attack case never existed in the main story of Braz that he knows. He processes the implications of this deviation. It means the main characters of the story won't be joining the fray, and this case will likely resolve itself without their intervention. This realization prompts a nervous chuckle from him. Beside him, the armored female knight sits with her eyes closed, seemingly asleep. He tunes back into the briefing's conclusion. The plan is to expand their search range and establish a night patrol. He and Kagaya have been assigned to take charge of the Eastern Gate. With renewed purpose, he turns to his partner, cheerfully announcing it's time to investigate. He calls her name, only to realize that Kagaya is completely and soundly asleep in her chair. He stares at her sleeping form, a look of disbelief crossing his face as he mutters, seriously. He nervously approached a large, imposing knight, offering a greeting. The knight's expression was severe as he demanded to know which group Alan had been assigned to. Upon hearing Alan's answer, that he was with the guard regiment of the Eastern Gate, the knight erupted in disbelief. He questioned Captain Elda's thinking, unable to comprehend why she would pair a special-grade hero with a mere soldier. He then furiously declared that Kagaya was supposed to team up with his unit, the Second Holy Knight's Order. Alan immediately understood the man's true motive. He wanted to steal the credit for the mission. The knight leaned in close, his voice a low growl, warning Alan about his insolence. Unfazed, Alan calmly stated that the decision was not the knight's to make. Standing over the table where Kagaya still slept, the knight ordered him to withdraw from the investigation immediately, insisting the case was far beyond the capabilities of a simple soldier. As Alan began to explain that he was acting on direct orders from the captain of the First Holy Knight's Order, the man's patience snapped. He grabbed Alan by the collar, shouting that they, the Second Order, couldn't care less about the First. A subordinate watched nervously, murmuring that his leader was going too far. He shoved Alan back, roaring that as esteemed members of the Second Holy Knight's Order, they would not be outdone by the First in any manner. Suddenly, his subordinates began to tremble, urgently trying to warn their leader to look behind him. Annoyed, the knight turned to silence them, only to be met with the cold, smiling gaze of the now-awakened Kagaya. An intense pressure filled the room as Kagaya floated into the air, her eyes glowing with fury. She remarked on the knight's nerve for touching her darling. As the man crumpled to the floor, his hand caught in an invisible, crushing grip. Alan, startled, quickly tried to de-escalate the situation, assuring Kagaya that he was all right. Her weapon's sheath whips through the air, slamming into the wall with a resounding crack. Stunned by the sudden violence, Alan cries out her name, a desperate plea for her to wait. The intervention is cut short as the leader of the Second Holy Knight's Order collapses to the floor with a heavy thud, his armor crushed. A red-haired woman steps into the tense silence, raising a hand and issuing a single, firm command. Stay back. With a satisfied smile, Kagaya looks upon the knights she has just incapacitated. They lie groaning on the floor as she declares the audacity of them laying hands on her husband. Her words leave Alan stunned. He questions how a special-grade hero like her could say such a thing. Kagaya offers a playful, insincere apology, sticking her tongue out and admitting she's not good at holding back her power. As they walk away from the scene through the darkened streets, he pleads with Kagaya to avoid using her abilities so unexpectedly, complaining that it's bad for his heart. She seems to ignore his concern, dreamily remarking on the romantic atmosphere of night patrol. She then turns the conversation back to the attack, confirming that the man had indeed targeted him. She justifies her overwhelming response as perfectly natural, stating it is a wife's duty to protect her husband. He concedes that she saved him, but insists she went too far. With a smug grin, Kagaya dismisses his complaint, asking instead for praise for having protected him so well. Her playful teasing continues as she flashes a peace sign, noting that the doubtful look on his face is quite apparent. Alan can only respond with a weary sigh. Sensing his continued skepticism, her tone shifts. She assures him that her love for him is genuine, citing his tendency to care for others and how much fun he is to tease as some of the reasons. Her expression becomes intense and sincere. Above all else, she confesses she loves the true, immense strength that he keeps hidden from everyone. He looks away, dismissing the idea and doubting that a chance to use such power would ever arise. Unfazed, she leans in and gently pokes his cheek, asking him a promise to show her his full power someday. As he processes her request, Kagaya begins to float slightly off the ground. With a soft smile, she imparts a piece of wisdom, stating that responsibility is part and parcel of being strong. Her words leave Alan looking up in quiet confusion, pondering their meaning. He stands with Kagaya under the brilliant full moon. She gestures towards it, calling him by his alias, Silva, and remarks that the moon is beautiful tonight. His eyes widen slightly, taking in her words and the sight before him. He agrees with her assessment, but then she turns to him with a serious expression, posing a hypothetical question. If she were to say she was born from the moon, would he believe her? The question is not as strange as it sounds, for he knows Kagaya's true history. He recalls the knowledge that she was chosen as a vessel for secretive research meant to harvest magic from moon. It was this lunar magic that transformed the weeping young girl into the strongest of all. Armed with this truth, he looks at her in the present and answers without hesitation, stating that yes, he would. His immediate acceptance surprises her. A gentle, relieved smile spreads across her face as she laughs softly and thanks him. He then explains his reasoning, suggesting that believing she came from the moon would simply make the entire notion more romantic. The word romantic catches her completely off guard, leaving her blushing and momentarily speechless. Her composure shatters as she brightens up, flustered. She exclaims that he's being sheepish for once and accuses him of teasing his wife. He calmly corrects her, stating that she is not his wife. His gaze remains steady as he finishes his thought, adding that her use of that word is misplaced. His blunt words hung in the air between them. Suddenly, his focus shifted, his expression hardening as a strange odor reached him. He wondered aloud what the scent could be as they stood alone in the wide, empty space. Before Kagaya could answer, a piercing scream echoed from a nearby alleyway, causing them both to whip around. Alan called out her name, a question in his voice, and she affirmed his unspoken suspicion. He knew the scent. His realization was confirmed by Kagaya's visceral reaction. A low growl rumbled in her throat, her face contorting with predatory disgust as she identified the foul odor with absolute certainty. The filthy scent of demons. In a dark alley, Alan and Kagaya come upon a grim scene. A hooded figure lies collapsed on the cobblestones. Enraged, Alan demands to know what is happening and immediately dashes forward to intervene. Before he can reach them, a massive, winged demon descends, snatching the fallen person. With a powerful leap, the creature bounds away onto the rooftops, leaving Alan staring in disbelief, cursing his inability to stop it. His attention then snaps to another figure on the ground nearby. He rushes to their side, calling out to check if they are all right. He finds his female companion, unconscious. A wave of relief washes over him as he confirms that she is still breathing. With her immediate safety confirmed, he turns to Kagaya, asking if she can take the woman to the medical office. He declares his own intention. He will go after the demon. She agrees without hesitation, but voices her concern, asking if he can manage the pursuit by himself. He confidently tells her not to worry and to leave it to him. With that settled, Alan activates his magical enhancement. Power surges through him as he leaps into the night, bounding effortlessly across the city's rooftops under the full moon. His enhanced eyes scan the darkness, and in a moment, he spots his core. He shouts for the creature to wait, pushing his speed to the limit as he dashes across the tiles, closing the distance to the fleeing winged silhouette. Just as he closes in, the demon's form dissolves with a flutter of countless wings. He stops, stunned, realizing it wasn't a single entity, but a horde of bloodbats. He lunged through the swarm, batting the creatures aside with a grunt. This was becoming a real nuisance. As his companion questioned whether the demon could command its own minions, his mind sharpened. He recalled a specific technique, Zalencia's sword style. Putting the thought into action, he unleashed a wild thrust, a powerful lunge that parted the swarm of bats. The hooded victim looked on in surprise as Alan closed the distance, announcing he had finally caught up. The captive figure lowered their head, their expression hidden within the shadows of their hood. Before he could reach them, the bats swarmed together, reforming into the winged demon, which then took flight. "Wait!" he yelled, but it was no use. Cursing the creature's annoying tactics, he resolved that if it had come to this, he would use a different approach, and his blade began to radiate a brilliant light. With a cry, Alan lunges, driving his blade into the winged demon. The creature recoils, its shadowy form pierced by the attack. But the blow is not enough. The demon tears itself free, its form silhouetted against the full moon as it escapes into the night. He watches it go, realizing it got away. Later, he arrives at the clinic. Inside, Kagaya greets him, asking if he returned empty-handed. He apologizes, confirming the demon escaped, and inquires about her well-being. He then reports that he successfully saved a life, noting that the hemonitic was effective. She tells him not to blame himself. He looks down, admitting that pursuing the creature alone was a mistake, and expresses his relief that she is unharmed. She reassures him, doubting anyone else could have caught a creature that managed to evade him. Her attention then shifts to the tattered piece of the demon's wing in his hand, suggesting it could serve as a lead. His expression hardens with resolve as he declares he will catch it for sure next time. His newfound motivation brings a delighted smile to Kagaya's face, who finds his spirit lovely. He appears slightly embarrassed by her praise, asking her to stop. As they walk, the gravity of the situation settles in. The starved demons will almost certainly strike again, making it imperative to capture them before anyone else is harmed. He looks up at Kagaya, who has taken a position on a nearby rooftop, contemplating their next move. The only lead they have is the piece of fabric stained with the demon's blood. He calls out to her, proposing a long shot. He holds up the piece of wing, asking Kagaya to try and smell it. He held out the blood-stained fragment of the demon's wing, asking Kagaya if she could trace them with its smell. He reminded her that she had previously claimed to be able to recognize the scent of demons, but she only stared back, looking perplexed. She clarified that while it was true she was sensitive to the scent, her nose wasn't sharp enough to actively track them down. With a slight smile, she reminded him that she was not a dog. His hopes dashed. Alan slumped to the ground in frustration, lamenting that he had thought it was a brilliant idea. Seeing his dejection, Kagaya's demeanor shifted entirely. Cat-like ears suddenly sprouted from her head as she declared that if it was his wish, she would do everything in her power to fulfill it. She eagerly offered to turn into a cat, or even a dog for him, proclaiming it was her duty as a wife. Her zealous offers only flustered him. He shouted her name, Silva, begging her to stop and insisting he would apologize. Undeterred, she continued, offering to lick his shoes or even take off his clothes. Their strange exchange was interrupted by a new arrival. Alan recognized her immediately as Charlie. The young woman asked what he was doing there, explaining that she had been looking for him. She proudly announced that she had aced her written tests and wanted him to praise her. Before he could respond, Kagaya, still sporting her feline features, turned her intense gaze on the newcomer and asked who the young missy might be. Alan realized with a jolt of panic that Kagaya was now caught up in a sudden rivalry. The young woman, Charlie, looked at Kagaya with wide-eyed recognition, identifying her as the special grade hero. Caught off guard by the title, Kagaya awkwardly introduced herself simply as a friend of Silva's. She explained that as a student of the Heroes Academy, she would of course know of someone so famous. Charlie expressed how honored she was to meet her, remarking on her potential. Alan, meanwhile, thought to himself how incredible Charlie was, remaining so collected in the presence of a hero far beyond her league. A look of startled concern crosses Charlie's face as she confronts Alan, demanding to know the nature of his relationship with Silva. In response, Kagaya dramatically interjects, declaring herself to be Silva's wife, the most fragile, demure, and beautiful in the world. Alan looks on in horror, realizing with a sweat drop that Charlie is now being drawn into the rivalry as well. He is relieved for the opportunity to clear up the misunderstanding, but simultaneously dismayed that Charlie has also become jealous. Turning to Charlie, he begins to explain, clarifying that Kagaya is merely a friend and a business partner. He insists her claim of being his wife is entirely self-proclaimed. He continues, informing her that he and Kagaya are going on patrols together to investigate the recent vampire attacks. Upon hearing this, Charlie's expression sharpens. She reveals that news of the vampire case has been circulating in her academy and declares that she would like to help as well. She pouts, insisting she can be of help, but Kagaya smiles condescendingly, questioning what Silva's friend could possibly do. Provoked by the challenge, Charlie claps her hands together. A brilliant light erupts around her as she invokes a spell, commanding her master to come forth. In a flash of energy, a massive, spectral Fenrir wolf materializes. Kagaya watches, intrigued, recognizing the impressive summoning magic. She proudly explains that her elemental magic allows her to summon contracted spirits at any time. She introduces the creature as Fenrir, a wolf spirit she affectionately calls Ruru, who then licks her face. She explains that elemental magic is an omnipotent skill, useful for both the battlefield and exploration. Alan, looking at the massive creature, remarks that it has a cute name. The wolf simply lets out a bark in response. As he pets the wolf, Charlie expresses her astonishment. She explains that Ruru is a spirit who has been by her side since she was a child and has never taken a liking to anyone else. He realizes, however, that the only reason he can touch Ruru is because his intimacy with Charlie has reached its maximum level. The massive wolf then rolls onto its back, exposing its belly. Delighted, Charlie exclaims how cute it is as Alan gives the creature a satisfying rub. The pleasant moment is broken by Kagaya's arrival. She mutters her disapproval, thinking the wolf is rude for not accepting her. Ruru responds with a low growl, defensively positioning itself in front of Charlie, who explains with a soft laugh that this is its normal behavior and Alan is a special case. Shifting the subject, Alan asks if Ruru can follow a demon's trail using the scent from a piece of cloth. Charlie confirms this, explaining that Ruru is adept at sniffing out demons and can track them easily once it has a clue. She presents a piece of cloth to the wolf, urging it to find the scent. Ruru sniffs the fabric intently before letting out an affirmative bark. Charlie notes with excitement that the spirit has found something. With the trail found, Alan looks to both Charlie and Kagaya, who nod in understanding. He then gives the order. They're giving chase. Under the cover of darkness, a small group approaches a pair of wooden buildings, their forms silhouetted against the dim light. The group is revealed to be Alan, Kagaya, Charlie, and the great wolf Ruru, moving with purpose through the night. As they draw closer, Kagaya asks Alan for the plan, questioning if all of them should infiltrate. She then turns to the wolf, asking, Ruru, does the small one come off from there? The beast responds with an enthusiastic bark. He responds decisively, stating that Kagaya will stand by outside while only he and Charlie go in. Kagaya looks back, her expression skeptical as she asks if the two of them will be all right on their own. She presses the point, reminding him that he is surely aware that despite all his trouble, he still allowed his target to escape their last encounter. He smiles, acknowledging that he knows. That, he explains, is precisely why he wants her to remain outside. Alan elaborates on his strategy. He tells Kagaya her power is a bit over the top for this mission and that she's not suited for close-quarters fighting. He explains that while Ruru and Charlie are needed to infiltrate, having someone to guard their position from the outside is essential. Her expression softens, a faint blush appearing on her cheeks as she concedes that he knows her well. Suddenly, she floats into the air, arms crossed, and a look of pure delight on her face. I'm so happy, she declares. Is this love? Alan, looking flustered, immediately retorts, of course not. She gracefully accepts his command from her position in the air, proclaiming that she will follow his instructions in order to respond to his love. Alan confidently finalizes the plan, assuring his companions that he won't let a single threat get past him. He then informs Charlie that he wants Ruru, the Great Wolf, to take the lead, a suggestion the creature greets with an enthusiastic pan. Pleased by this, he praises Riru's dependability. The wolf responds with a sharp bark as they stand at the edge of the woods, ready to proceed. He then turns to Charlie, instructing her to stay behind him. She looks up at him with a quiet, knowing expression. With the formation set, they enter a dark, dilapidated wooden structure. Sword in hand, Alan glances back, confirming they are ready to move forward. Inside, the air is still and heavy. Riru leads the way through a shadowy corridor, sniffing the path ahead as Alan and Charlie follow closely. The silence is suddenly shattered by a loud thump. Alan is startled as Charlie stumbles, grabbing onto his back to keep her balance. She quickly apologizes, her face flushed with embarrassment. With a nervous expression, she admits that she got a bit scared. His own heart begins to pound, a blush creeping up his neck. He tries to rationalize the situation, reminding himself that it's understandable for her to be anxious since she's still a student at the Heroes Academy. But as she continues to squeeze the fabric of his tunic, his rationalizations crumble. He can't help but think that his favorite heroine is holding on to him, and he wonders if he's dreaming. His reverie is broken by a sharp, aggressive bark. Riru has detected something ahead, her body tense for a fight. Snap back to reality. Alan demands to know what's wrong. He stared into the darkness ahead, confirming Riru's warning. Is it here? He murmured. Turning slightly, he instructed Charlie to stand back, and she complied without hesitation as Riru remained fixated on the unseen threat beyond the door. From the shadows, a small, robed figure emerged. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. He was certain he knew that robe. With a choked, inhuman cry, the diminutive figure shot forward, closing the distance in an instant. The creature's hand clamped onto his arm. Before he could fully react, the figure's momentum carried it past him, its cloak whipping through the air as it landed with a soft thud. It immediately spun around and lunged once more. As he watched the attack, a strange feeling washed over him. Something felt slightly off, but he couldn't be sure if it was just his imagination. The small, hooded figure lunges, its jaw unhinged in a vicious snarl. Positioned below, Alan focuses his resolve, deciding to end the fight here and now by channeling Zalencia's sword style. He unleashes a powerful upper slash, his blade tracing a brilliant arc of energy that cleaves through the air and strikes the creature with devastating force. The attack lands true, and the hooded figure collapses to the ground with a heavy thud. Alan watches, a look of stunned surprise on his face. He stares down at the motionless form, wondering to himself if his opponent was truly supposed to be this weak. From a nearby doorway, a voice calls out. The uniformed girl, accompanied by the white wolf Ruru, peers into the room and asks if he managed to take the enemy down. He confirms that he did somehow. She remarks that it was an incredible slash, a faint blush on her cheeks. Flustered by the praise, he rubs the back of his head and insists it was nothing that amazing. Suddenly, a rustling sound cuts through the quiet. Charlie gets his attention, calling him Silva and asking if he hears it too. He does, and they agree to investigate the source. Following the sound, she points toward a dark corner of the room, spotting its origin. Over there, she calls out. The group moves cautiously past several large crates. The rustling sound grows louder, now accompanied by a faint groan from behind the stacked boxes. Peeking around the obstruction, both he and Charlie freeze, their eyes widening in shock at the sight before them. His discovery behind the crates was grim. A group of people, bound with ropes and gagged, huddled together in fear and exhaustion. He and Charlie stare at the scene, Alan wondering aloud who these unfortunate souls were. Moments later, their captain, Elda Snow White, arrived, her face beaming with pride. "Well done, Silva," she exclaimed, her voice bright and full of praise. Kagaya then clapped him heartily on the back, expressing her own impressed surprise that he had managed to rescue the captives on top of defeating the monster. Elda, however, looked on with an annoyed expression, reminding Kagaya that she was also present. With a slight click of her tongue, she begrudgingly acknowledged Kagaya's efforts as well, to which Kagaya offered a simple thank you. Elda then announced she would report to the higher-ups that Kagaya, Charles, and Gateguard Silva had safely resolved the vampire issue. This prompted a nervous smile from Alan, who quickly asked her to wait. He pleaded with her not to mention that he was the one who took down the vampire, explaining that he didn't want to attract any undue attention. Elda looked back, puzzled by his request. She couldn't see the harm in it, pointing out that if his exploits spread, it would just give her another reason to invite him to join the order. The suggestion made Alan freeze in place. He reacted with frantic denial, reminding her that she had supposedly given up on asking him to join. Elda feigned ignorance, asking if she had really said that. When Alan insisted, she cleared her throat, smoothly changing the subject by announcing she would ensure they all received rewards worthy of their hard work. He is visibly shocked, realizing his hope of escaping Elda's hellish insistence that he join the Order of the Knights was entirely premature. His dismay is interrupted as Elda cheerfully hops into view, presenting him with a heavy sack. She announces it's his reward for slaying the vampire and saving the captives. Taking the reward, his thoughts immediately turn to the victims. He asks what happened to the women they rescued. Elda reassures him that they are all safe. She explains that they likely hadn't been captured for long, suffered no severe injuries, and recovered quickly. Charlie adds that the vampire probably intended to keep them as an emergency food supply. Despite the good news, a sense of unease settles over him. He feels that something about the situation is wrong. He reasons that a creature keeping emergency food would likely lack significant intelligence. A new plan forms in his mind. The church should have plenty of information on vampires, and that will be his next destination. As he stands lost in thought, Kagaya notices that Elda is similarly distracted. Waving a hand in front of the knight captain's flushed face, Kagaya tries to get her attention, asking what could be wrong. Alan awkwardly thanks his hooded companion for her hard work, dismissing her concern by saying it's nothing. She tells him he is free to leave. He turns and walks away from the large gate, clutching a bag to his chest with a contemplative expression. As he walks, Kagaya suddenly appears beside him, leaning in close. She correctly intuits that something is bothering him. He looks over, surprised that she figured it out. Kagaya smiles, reminding him that of course she would. She's his wife, after all. When she asks what's wrong, he admits that he has a nagging suspicion that he's still trying to think through. He tells her to quit teasing him, but she simply laughs. She finds his expression lovely when he's deep in thought, comparing him to a detective. Kagaya states that since they technically solved the case, she will return to replenish her mana. She offers a final word of encouragement, hoping her lovely detective will reach his answer. As they part ways, Alan apologizes for making her accompany him for so many days. She waves it off, reminding him that she was the one who asked to tag along. He mentions that he still needs to give her a third of the reward money. Kagaya dismisses the sum as a pittance, which shocks their companion. Kagaya then adds that simply spending time with him is more than enough reward for her. She leaps away over a wall, bidding farewell to her cute husband. Flustered, Alan asks her not to say things like that so directly, prompting her to playfully ask if he's getting embarrassed. He watches as Kagaya floats away, her parting words a playful warning not to cheat on her, followed by a request to use the proper entrance next time. As she vanishes into the sky, he stands alone on the rooftop, quietly pondering her choice of words. Cheating, he murmurs to himself. Turning from the rooftop, he makes his way down a set of stone stairs, calling out an apology for the delay. At the bottom of the stairs, a young woman named Charlie greets him with a warm smile, assuring him that she didn't mind the wait. He asks after Kagaya, and Charlie explains that she had to leave for other business. Alan nods in understanding. He then expresses his gratitude, telling Charlie that they were able to solve the case thanks to her help. She demurs, insisting that he doesn't need to thank her, as she was only acting for her own reasons. He insists, however, stating that he is truly grateful and that her contribution will undoubtedly reflect well on her grades at the Heroes Academy. As he brings up the subject of her reward, holding out a pouch of money, he privately thinks that seeing her happy face is more than enough reward for him. To his surprise, she holds up her hands and firmly refuses the pouch, stating that she doesn't need her share of the reward. When he asks why, she explains with a determined blush that she merely found the demon. She has made a vow to herself not to accept any rewards until she becomes an official hero, capable of defeating demons with her own strength. He is visibly moved by her conviction. Charlie, he begins, his own face flushing with admiration. What a noble goal. That's my favorite part about you. His admiration gives way to a new idea. He offers to buy her anything she wants, tapping the pouch of money, but adds that there is something he desires in exchange. His offer was met with a gentle, blushing smile from Charlie. With her eyes closed, she apologized and explained that what she truly wanted was not something that could be obtained with money. Her cryptic refusal left him completely baffled. As she began to elaborate, he could only scratch the back of his head in confusion, a faint blush rising to his own cheeks. He didn't have to wonder for long. Looking up at him with a sincere and hopeful expression, Charlie finally revealed her true desire. What she wanted was time with him, with Silva. Silva frets, sweating with anxiety. He cannot decide what to wear for the occasion, wondering what he should do. His mind drifts to an image of Charlie. He can't believe he's actually going on a date with his favorite person. He recalls her telling him that all she wants is time with him. Having finally decided on an outfit, he slips on a shirt, figuring it will have to do. Just then, a sharp knock comes from his door. It's Modi, asking if he wants to go grab a bite to eat. He bursts past the surprise guard, shouting an apology. Realizing the time, he explains that he's going on a date and will have to catch up later. Left in his wake, Modi mutters that if it's a date, it can't be helped. The guard's casual acceptance vanishes as the word truly registers. His eyes widen in shock as he repeats it aloud. A date? Meanwhile, Silva arrives at the bustling fountain square, his nerves frayed. He reflects that in his past life as a corporate drone, he never once went on a date. He has no idea what he's supposed to say to her. He then spots her and calls out a greeting, wishing her good morning. Internally, he frantically reminds himself that this is a real date, not an arranged marriage meeting, as he apologizes for being late. His apology dies on his lips as he takes in the sight before him. Charlie stands there, not in her usual attire, but in a beautiful, flowing white dress that leaves him utterly captivated. She greets him in return, but her smile fades into a look of concern. She points toward his face, asking why he's crying. He wipes a tear from his eye, explaining that he was just overcome with happiness. He admits he never imagined he'd get to see her in casual clothes in person. She smiles gently, offering a comforting there. He clenches his fist, overwhelmed by the moment. Charlie looks down at him, a slight smile on her face, and remarks that he's acting weird. Internally, he declares that he has not a single regret in his life. His emotional outburst leaves him looking completely drained. Charlie, startled, shouts that it looks like his very soul is leaving his body. He shakily confirms it was a close call, admitting he was about to pass on. After composing himself, he scratches the back of his head and apologizes for startling her, properly wishing her a good morning. She smiles warmly and returns the greeting. He then asks what she would like to do today, suggesting they go shopping together. He also mentions that a new cafe has opened. Charlie readily agrees, telling him she'll go wherever he wants. With their plans set, the two of them walk side by side through the bustling city streets. Their shopping trip is a success. Charlie joyfully browses through racks of clothing, while Silva, carrying a bag, gives an enthusiastic thumbs up. He happily carries an increasing number of shopping bags as Charlie makes another purchase at a shop counter. Laden with bags on both arms, he strikes a triumphant pose. Beside him, Charlie shyly hides her smiling face behind one of her new items. Their shopping complete, they finally arrive at the new cafe they had planned to visit. As they sit together, their hands near a warm cup of coffee, Silva looks at her intently. He finally asks the question on his mind. "Charlie, why did you invite me on a date, of all people?" He awaited her answer, and after a moment, she began to explain. She had wanted to speak with him alone, as it had been a while, and more importantly, something had been bothering her lately that she needed to discuss. She continued, noting that at the Heroes Academy, they have to form parties and take lessons. The issue, she revealed, was with their party leader, Alan. Silva, listening intently, prompted her to explain what was bothering her. With a look of clear discomfort, she confessed that Alan has been flirting with the female members of their party every single day, and it was making her deeply uncomfortable. She added that Alan had also been making passes at her, which was a problem. Silva processed this new information, wondering if this meant Alan was dating the other girls. He concluded to himself that it was probably true. The realization struck him with force. He understood now. Alan was aiming for the harem route of this world. He grimaced, recalling that this particular game's harem route was notoriously difficult to complete. His mind raced, recalling the specific rules. To succeed, one had to raise the affection of all the heroines equally and clear all their confession events at the same time. Dating someone mid-game meant immediate failure, resulting in being dumped by everyone. He thought with some grim satisfaction that Alan would be fine, since he himself had already lost affection points with Charlie. The conversation returned to the present as Charlie clarified her position. She had faith in Alan as a comrade, she admitted, but the idea of him pursuing another girl while already having a lover made her feel sick. She continued, explaining that Alan often asks her out on dates, but she always refuses. Despite her rejections, he remains pushy. Silva listened quietly, acknowledging to himself how rough the situation must be for her. Blushing, she covered her mouth and began to add, "And besides," as she hesitated, Silva covered his own face, overcome with a sudden wave of guilt. He internally apologized to her, remembering all the times he had pursued that same route before his reincarnation. She abruptly stopped herself. "Never mind. It's nothing," she said, leaving the thought unfinished. Her sudden retreat, however, had the opposite effect on Silva. His eyes widened in shock, his curiosity now overwhelmingly piqued. Charlie sips her tea, a thoughtful expression on her face. She tells Silva that she has secrets she can't even share with him, musing that a maiden's heart is a complicated thing. Her words send Silva tumbling from his seat in shock. He lies on the floor, his mind racing with disbelief, certain that it can't be what he's thinking. As he grapples with this thought, a new voice calls out to Charles. Charlie looks up from her tea, her expression shifting to one of concerned surprise as she asks what's wrong. The voice belongs to Alan, the hero, who stands before them with a confident smile. He is flanked by two young women, Margaret Neris and Rena Cassius, both known heroine candidates. "Fancy meeting you here," he exclaims. His sudden appearance flusters Charlie, who asks what he and his companions are doing there. Rena, with a bright and cheerful grin, happily announces that they are on a date. She then turns to Margaret, reminding her that they had invited her to join them just the other day, a comment that seems to make Margaret slightly uncomfortable. From his seat, Silva quietly sips his tea, taking in the scene. He understands now. These are the two girls Alan is currently pursuing. His mind drifts back to his knowledge of the original story. He recalls that Rena and Margaret are considered easy heroines to win over. In fact, they're known to actively support Alan in his quest to build a harem. He watches the trio's easy camaraderie, realizing how difficult it is to change party compositions at the academy. The thought of being in such a complicated social dynamic makes him feel deeply awkward. Just then, Alan's gaze lands on him. He turns to Charlie, his expression curious, and asks, "Charles, who is that?" He is met with a weary explanation from Charlie, who identifies Silva as a mere gatekeeper before adding, with a hint of defiance, that they are also on a date. Alan is taken aback by this revelation, wondering what it could possibly mean. He senses an overwhelming amount of mana overflowing from Silva, who remains impassive. His shock turns to outrage as he confronts Charlie, unable to believe she refused his offer to go on a date with someone he dismisses as a mob-looking guy. Charlie retorts sharply, telling him he is being rude to Silva. She decides to end the confrontation, suggesting to Silva that they go somewhere else. As they start to leave, a stunned Alan, his face cast in shadow, pleads for her not to follow him. Watching them, his shock hardens into a grim certainty. He concludes that for Charles to be dating someone like Silva, there could be only one explanation. Silva is a demon. Both Silva and Charlie turn back, startled by the accusation. He presses his accusation, claiming Silva plans to deceive and kidnap Charlie. His companions, Rina and Margaret, recall hearing recent rumors of a demon kidnapping women, which only solidifies Alan's belief that Silva is the culprit. His companions quickly agree with his assessment. Rina exclaims that it makes no sense for Charles to refuse Alan's offer otherwise, and Margaret adds her own conclusion. The demon must have brainwashed her. Overhearing their speculation, Charlie can no longer contain her frustration. She shouts for them to stop, insisting she isn't brainwashed and desperately asking why they can't understand her feelings. Silva watches her, his expression hardening as he murmurs her name. Her emotional plea only serves to reinforce his conviction. He grits his teeth, certain that she is under a strong mind control spell. Pointing directly at Silva, he roars, calling him a wretched demon and vowing not to let him play with his precious person. He and his companions move to act on this belief. Alan and Rina urge Charlie to come back with them, but she resists, crying out in protest. Distressed, Alan laments how powerful the brainwashing must be, while Margaret looks on, muttering that he has it all wrong. His accusations reverberate in Silva's mind. Seated alone, Silva reflects on the protagonist he once admired, wondering if Alan had always been such a pathetic jerk. His grip tightens on the teacup in his hand, the porcelain cracking under the pressure before shattering completely. The violent shattering seems to manifest physically before Alan's party. A menacing, masked figure materializes from the shadows, looming over Alan. Startled, Margaret breathes out a single, questioning word. Silva, believing this to be the demon he was hunting, Alan draws his weapon, shouting and demanding to know what it's trying to pull. Before he can attack, however, the real Silva steps between him and Charlie, raising a hand to halt the advance. He looks at Alan with contempt, calling him a thick-skulled bonehead and admitting he never thought Alan was like this. He then turns his attention from the hero's party. Charlie looks up at him, also calling his name, Silva. He explains that he had considered staying quiet, but Alan's incessant accusations forced his hand. With a gentle smile, he pats her on the head and apologizes, admitting that Alan pushed his buttons. Turning back to face Alan, Margaret, and Rina, he makes his position unequivocally clear. Given their current attitude, he states firmly that he cannot hand Charlie over to them. His defiance enrages Alan, whose face twists in fury. He snarls that he doesn't need Silva's permission. Beside him, Margaret looks on with disdain, remarking that Alan is certainly running his mouth. Silva's expression hardens in response. "Fine by me," he says coolly. Taking this as a challenge, Alan declares he will simply take her back by force and lunges forward in a blur of motion. As the confrontation escalates, a memory surfaces in Silva's mind, a happier time, showing Charlie and a different version of Alan smiling together. He reflects that the Alan he once knew would have understood how Charlie feels. His resolve solidifies. He has no intention of denying the way this current Alan chooses to act, but he thinks to himself that there is one thing he absolutely cannot forgive him for. Meanwhile, Charlie watches the standoff, a soft but determined smile on her face. She makes an internal vow, thinking that she'll be damned if she lets a certain scenario come to pass. Her eyes trembled with resolve, fixated on the one future she would never allow to pass, a reality where Charlie couldn't smile. As she stood her ground, Alan casually declared his intention to personally correct her misguided resolve. This blatant threat ignited a furious response from the other Silva, who snarled at the damn demon for his arrogance and swore to tear him apart with his blade. He stepped forward, his fist clenching tightly as a palpable aura of menace emanated from him. He warned Alan not to underestimate a man who had been a troublesome nerd even in his past life. The two now locked in a tense, confrontational standoff. Within the expansive training grounds of the Heroes Academy, a confrontation is brewing. Alan approaches Silva, expressing surprise that he would choose this particular place for their duel. Silva points his sword forward, explaining that here, he can unleash his full power without worrying about his surroundings. Alan smirks, warning him that he is going to regret this decision. Nearby, Charlie's face is etched with guilt. She apologizes profusely to Silva, believing she is the cause of this entire mess. He turns to her, his expression softening as he insists she has nothing to apologize for. His gaze then hardens as he looks toward his opponent, declaring that the one who truly needs to apologize is Alan. Alan's companion impatiently urges him to defeat Silva quickly so they can continue their date. Alan scoffs, boasting that with his skill and power, he can eliminate a mere demon like Silva in a flash. He continues his taunts, confident that once the battle is over, Charles will once again fall for his strength. Hearing this, Charlie turns away, her expression a mixture of disgust and resolve. Silva's eyes narrow with cold fury. He vows to defeat this man and force him to apologize to Charlie. Sensing his determination, Charlie admits that Alan is indeed strong, but tells Silva that she wants him to win and will be rooting for him. He gives her a reassuring smile, confidently telling her to leave it to him. He raises his sword with a soft clink, readying his stance and challenging Alan to begin. Alan approaches, mocking Silva's shabby equipment and questioning if he is truly prepared for the fight. He scoffs with contempt as his opponent, Silva, hold a plain sword steady. Silva calmly states that this simple gear is more than enough to take him on. In response to the defiance, he lunges forward, shouting for Silva to keep dreaming. His own blade slashes through the air, but Silva sidesteps the attack with surprising speed. The move leaves Alan momentarily stunned, realizing his opponent dodged the blow. Before he can recover from his surprise, Silva closes the distance, his fist already drawn back. Alan's eyes widen in disbelief at the sudden counterattack. The fist connects squarely with Alan's jaw. The impact is solid, and Alan grunts, acknowledging the surprising force behind the blow. The force of the punch sends him sliding backward across the training ground, digging his heels in to stop. He stares at his own fist, wondering if Silva used magic enhancement to achieve that level of strength. He glares at his opponent, his suspicion growing. He points accusingly, stating that Silva is no ordinary gatekeeper. His opponent simply sighs, tossing the simple sword aside with a clang. Silva calmly states that he already told him he was nothing special, just a gatekeeper. Alan, confused and angry, demands to know what he's trying to pull. He cracks his knuckles, a confident grin spreading across his face. He declares that with Alan in his current state, his bare hands are more than enough to deal with him. The taunt enrages Alan, who roars at him not to underestimate it. Enraged, he charges forward again, slashing with his sword. Silva ducks under the swing and drives a powerful punch into Alan's midsection, telling him to clench his teeth. The blow sends Alan stumbling back. Before he can regain his footing, Silva leaps into the air, twisting his body into a powerful kick that slams into Alan's head. Alan can only cry out in shock as the impact sends him crashing to the ground. His companions watch, stunned. Margaret, her eyes wide with shock, cries out that it's impossible. The force of the kick sends Alan hurtling through the air before he crashes to the ground. Rena exclaims that Silva wiped him out with a single strike, while Margaret can only stammer about him being sent flying. On the ground, clutching his sword, Alan curses his defeat. As he struggles, Rena rushes to his side, pleading for him to get himself together. She casts a healing spell, calling for solace to mend his wounds. Meanwhile, Silva stands with a satisfied smile, feeling much better after the confrontation. He briefly wonders to himself if perhaps he hit his opponent a little too hard. Alan's expression hardens into a glare of pure fury as Rena and Margaret help him back to his feet. He ignores their concern. Margaret asks what's on his mind, and he responds with grim determination, stating that he needs to take Charles back. Overhearing this, Silva begins to correct him, pointing out that Charlie isn't his to take. But Alan cuts him off with a furious roar, shouting for him to be silent and proclaiming that he and Charles are bonded by a strong love. The memory of a laughing, shadowy demon Lord flashes through his mind. Fueled by this vision, Alan points his sword forward, swearing an oath to his comrade that he will defeat this foe. He looks up from the ground, his eyes filled with a fierce, almost manic intensity, and quietly wonders about that vow. He feels the heartbeats of his comrades, convinced they are fighting on, bonded by a profound love. With fierce determination, he declares that this bond will never be broken. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room, Silva and a companion watch these events unfold on a screen. The companion is captivated, admitting the story is a bit generic, but that he loves classic tales. He feels the passion in the hero's lines, calling Alan cool and cheering him on. He, however, reacts with disgust, pointing an accusing finger at the screen. He shouts at the on-screen hero, calling him a womanizer and telling him not to spout such ridiculous lines. The on-screen Alan, oblivious, continues his speech with fervor. He dismisses any criticism as nonsensical hogwash, declaring that he will become a hero, and that is why he speaks as he does. His voice rises to a desperate shout, insisting that Charles must be by his side. His two companions watch him, their expressions filled with concern. Back in the room, Silva's gaze is fixed on the screen. He comes to a quiet realization. The hero on screen doesn't understand the situation at all. The on-screen drama intensifies as Alan pleads for Charles to wait, vowing he will get her back immediately. The young woman stands with her back turned to him, unresponsive. She finally speaks, her tone somber as she tries to get his attention. She asks him to listen. Her words cut through his fervor. Alan looks toward her, his expression shifting to one of hopeful confusion as he utters her name. She, however, looks away with resolve, stating that she has made up her mind. With unwavering certainty, she delivers her decision. She is quitting his party, starting now. Alan's face contorts in utter shock and disbelief. The hero's on-screen shock was mirrored by those watching the story unfold. The young man and the uniformed girl beside Silva gasped in disbelief, while Silva himself observed with a quiet, knowing intensity. His companion, the uniformed girl, turned to him, explaining that watching this had helped her sort out her feelings. She mused that she could become a hero through hard work, even if it meant leaving her party. Her words were then overshadowed by the on-screen drama, as Charles, with a fierce expression, shouted for Alan to listen. He reacted with disbelief, his face contorted in anguish as he protested that it couldn't be true, reminding her of the deep bond they were supposed to share. Charles, however, remained unmoved, coolly informing him that no one was manipulating her decision. His protests died in his throat, leaving him speechless and stunned. Seeing his shock, Charles simply told him to give it a rest, but he refused to accept it. Gritting his teeth, he vowed that he would become lovers with her and rise to be the strongest hero. As he made this declaration, a brilliant light erupted from his body as he activated a skill, Soul Bond. Watching this unfold, Silva's expression hardened, This was exactly what he had anticipated. The activation of the skill on-screen had a tangible effect on his companions. A surge of energy seemed to leap from the display, jolting both the uniformed girl and the other young man. The man cried out Alan's name in alarm, while the girl flinched in surprise. Silva immediately identified the ability. As the hero on screen was enveloped in a powerful aura, his two companions in the room recoiled, realizing with alarm that their own mana was being drained away. He understood the spell's mechanics perfectly. It was an ability that turned the user's bond with their comrades into a source of special mana. Its strength, he knew, was decided by two factors: the number of close comrades and the depth of their bonds. The hero had to gather allies and foster those connections just to learn this spell. This realization filled him with contempt. He looked at the on-screen hero's actions and judged him to be irredeemable. It became clear that the hero's intense fixation on Charlie was not born of affection, but was merely a calculated move to strengthen his spell. He grimaced, the scene reminding him of when he first played the game and chose the wrong path. As a tremendous surge of power erupted on the screen, the uniformed girl, her face pale with worry, urged Silva to be careful, sensing the incredible amount of mana being unleashed. He reflects that if this were a game, he could simply replay it. But in real life, there are no second chances. Turning to his companions, he reassures them with a confident smile, promising to wrap things up quickly. Within the game's projection, the hero Alan roars his intent to become the strongest and save everyone. Margaret, however, questions his definition of save, scornfully reminding him that he just made a girl sad. Rena quietly affirms Margaret's sentiment. His desperate cry for power echoes as he insists he needs it to be the strongest. From the real world, Silva retorts that of course he does. A powerful force slams into Alan, who screams in agony. He clenches his teeth, declaring that while he's a fan of Alan's playstyle, he won't forgive anyone who makes his favorite characters sad. Vowing to make the hero pay dearly, he prepares to unleash a secret technique of his Valencia sword style. He unleashes the name of his secret technique with a powerful shout, "Blue Sky!" With the words still hanging in the air, he surges forward, his body enveloped in a shimmering, particle-like aura. The air rushes past in a great whoosh as he executes the maneuver. The attack blazes forward, its effect manifesting within the game itself. A brilliant light erupts, knocking Alan's companions, Margaret, Rena, and the other young man, off their feet. Standing over them, he addresses the on-screen hero, telling him to try and understand people's feelings. In the game, Alan stares in disbelief, realizing with horror that his soul bond has been severed. The sudden severing of his power source is too much. The hero Alan collapses to his knees, utterly defeated. He remained on the ground, defeated and looking up in a daze. From a distance, Silva watched him, letting out a weary sigh. The young duelist's thoughts were clear. He was greatly disappointed in the hero, Alan. A young woman in a uniform storms into the training yard, demanding to know what everyone is doing. She singles out a flustered Alan, asking what fuss he's causing on his day off. He stammers her name in surprise. Miss Reeve. As Reeve glares, Silva internally questions the name. He doesn't recall a character named Reeve from his past knowledge, wondering if she was a scrap character he never encountered. In response to her demanding gaze, Alan stammers an explanation, pointing a trembling finger at Silva. He tells her they suspect the newcomer is a demon. Reeve's expression shifts to one of serious contemplation, her hand rising to her chin as she processes the accusation. "That guy's a demon, you say?" Before she can consider it further, Silva vehemently denies the claim, shouting that he is no demon and guaranteeing it with absolute certainty. Suddenly, a new arrival interrupts. The captain of the Knights appears, remarking that it seems Silva has gotten himself into some tricky trouble. She explains she was drawn there by a surge of incredible mana and was surprised to find it. He looks back at her with an annoyed expression, retorting that her words are exactly what he was thinking. He then asks the commander what she is doing at the academy. She explains cheerfully that she's there for a meeting about the upcoming combat practicals. The Order of Knights will be attending the event, she adds, in case anything unforeseen should happen. His mind immediately flashes back to the original story he knows. During these practicals, the hero candidates of the academy are ambushed by level 3 low-level demons. He continues his internal recollection, realizing with gravity that this event is Alan's first real battle. The thought hangs in the air as he considers the implications. The Knight Captain, Elda Snow White, addressed him directly. With a cheerful expression, she called him by name, Silva, and questioned if his actions were admirable for someone dealing with a hero candidate. Before he could respond, she grabbed him and began pulling him away, playfully chiding that bullying the weak wasn't like him. As she dragged the flustered Silva off, Alan watched in stunned silence, wondering if he had somehow screwed up. His shock quickly curdled into resentment. Watching the group depart, Alan clenched his fist and vowed that he would one day defeat Silva with his own hands, a sentiment unbecoming of a protagonist. Without another word, he turned and sprinted away from the scene. His companions called out for him to wait, but he was already gone. Meanwhile, as they walked, the uniformed girl, Charles, turned to Silva. She observed that a lot seemed to have happened, noting that Alan appeared to hate him a great deal. Their conversation was interrupted by the Knight Captain. She turned her attention to the uniformed girl, asking if she was perhaps Charles. Surprised to be recognized, Charles asked how the captain knew her name. Elda explained that she'd heard a lot about her from Silva, specifically mentioning her help with the vampire case. Charles confirmed this, adding gratefully that Silva is always a great help to her, before Elda asked if she was also a student at the Heroes Academy. Elda smiled, declaring that as far as she was concerned, Silva was the strongest soldier she knew. She assured Charles that just being with him would cause her skills to grow significantly. With a happy blush, Charles agreed, saying she thought so too. The effusive praise caused a ripple of embarrassment through the group. Margaret cleared her throat awkwardly, and Silva scratched the back of his head, while Elda simply let out a hearty laugh. After a moment, Margaret regained her composure. She apologized for interrupting their conversation, but reminded the Knight Captain that it was about time for their scheduled meeting. With the meeting now pending, Knight Captain Elda cheerfully bids farewell. Silva, looking embarrassed, apologizes for the trouble he's caused. Elda waves it off, while Margaret offers a curt apology of her own before they depart. As she walks away, however, the word trouble seems to catch in her mind. She stops abruptly, dismissing the notion that it was no trouble at all. She spins around, a wide grin on her face, and points directly at Silva. She declares that it was indeed trouble, and, as a penalty for causing a scene, he must participate in the combat practicals of the Heroes Academy. With a boisterous laugh, she adds that he has no right to refuse. He is left utterly dumbfounded, unable to process the sudden command. Sometime later, as he and Charles walk away from the scene, Charles apologizes for involving him in the mess. She reasons that since it was trespassing, the outcome was unavoidable. He turns to her with a reassuring smile, telling her there's nothing to be sorry about, as he acted on his own will. He adds that because of this, she can now quit the Heroes Party without any regrets, and he is genuinely glad for her. His outward smile masks an internal calculation. He muses that while Charlie's dream to become a hero might come true, he doubts she would have had much to do with the main plot. With this turn of events, he believes she has now completely stepped down from her role as the heroine of the main story. The thought gives him pause. He considers the implications. If Charlie is no longer part of the main story, he can't imagine a future where she doesn't appear at all. He wonders if this means that even if he gets deeply involved with the plot himself, it won't affect her. The possibility that his actions might not negatively affect Charlie brings a hopeful, flustered expression to his face as he glances over at her. He walks beside Charlie, who turns to thank him. Internally, he recoils, questioning his own thoughts. He tells himself he should be happy just to see his favorite person, Charlie, by his side. She continues, a slight blush on her cheeks, explaining that thanks to him, she has now found the resolve to become a hero, even if she were to be alone. Looking at him earnestly, she begins to ask a question for the future. When that happens, she starts, "Will you?" Their moment is abruptly broken by the sound of a child's wail. Both turn to see a small boy crying by himself. They approach, and Silva asks the boy where his parents are, but the child can only confirm that they are not there. He then asks where the boy's house is. The child tearfully replies that he no longer has a mother or a father, and that his home is the church. The answer catches Silva by surprise. The boy continues his explanation, saying he was at the priest's place, playing outside with everyone else. He finishes by saying they all went off somewhere, leaving him behind. Silva listens, understanding that the boy was separated from his group. Seeing the situation, Charlie turns to Silva with a determined look. She suggests they take the child to the church, and he agrees they should. He kneels down to the boy's level and gently asks for his name. The child shyly replies, "Addie." Smiling, Silva offers to take him home and asks if he can ride on his back, much to Addie's surprised delight. With Addie now perched happily on his back, Silva begins walking through the town streets. Charlie walks alongside them, watching the pair with a warm, amused smile. He carries the young boy, Addie, on his back as they continue their walk through the city streets, with Charlie following close behind. Their destination comes into view, a large church with a tall steeple. Addie points excitedly, confirming it's the right place. Silva observes the building, realizing he might be able to find information on vampires there. As they approach the entrance, a man in clerical robes rushes out, calling Addie's name in alarm. The boy greets him as Sir Priest. The man, relieved to see the child is safe, asks if the two of them brought Addie back. He smiles warmly, introducing himself as the child's guardian. His name is Dan. Charlie expresses her relief that Addie made it home safely. The boy beams, thanking Mr. Silva and Miss Charles for their help. Dan, his expression fraught with the memory of his panic, tells them he can't thank them enough. He confesses that he nearly had a heart attack when the other children told him Addie had gotten separated from them. Hearing this, Addie shouts indignantly that he didn't get separated from them. They were the ones who got separated from him. Dan gently reprimands the boy, telling him that he still made everyone worry and needs to apologize. Addie reluctantly agrees. Silva watches the exchange with a slight smile. He notes that Dan seems to be a good-hearted priest who knows how to properly scold children and thinks to himself that Dan might be willing to answer his questions. The priest then turns his attention back to them, stating his desire to express his thanks in a more formal manner. Silva interrupts, saying there's no need for that, but he does have something he wants to ask Dan. He asks Dan if he and Charlie can spare some of his time. The priest looks surprised, but agrees, provided it's something he can answer. Dan then invites them to speak inside the church and begins to lead the way. The priest leans forward abruptly, his hands planted on the table in front of him. His surprise is a reaction to Silva's request. The young man explains that he was hoping the priest, if informed, could teach him about vampires. Dan repeats the word, his expression a mixture of shock and concern. He composes himself slightly and asks for clarification. Does Silva want to learn about the vampires that exist in myths, or about the vampire incident that occurred a while ago? Silva confirms he is interested in both. He elaborates, stating that while he believes the recent vampire issue has been resolved, something about the case still bothers him. The priest's gaze sharpens. He asks Silva if he happens to be a knight. Silva affirms that he is, for what it's worth. Upon hearing this, Dan lowers his head, a look of grim understanding crossing his face as he clasps his hands. I see, he murmurs, while Silva watches him in silence. He looks up again, offering to share what he has learned about them as a cleric, provided Silva is fine with information from legends. He then asks if Silva would like him to explain in detail. Dan begins his lecture. The name vampire, he explains, is a title for demons from legends, said to have evolved from vampire bats. They wield such immense power that fables tell of them leveling entire cities. He continues, explaining that their source of power is human blood. The more they drink, the stronger they become. A vampire who is fed on 10 people is so formidable that it requires several first-rate heroes to defeat, and even then, it is no easy feat. Finally, Dan adds that according to the fables, vampires also have the power to create minions. The word catches Silva's attention, and he repeats it quietly to himself. He listened as Priest Dan clasped his hands and explained the nature of minions. They are, according to legend, humans who have been given a vampire's blood. This bestowment grants them powers similar to a true vampire and compels them to attack other humans. His expression hardened with this new information. He thanked the priest, confirming that the details have been greatly helpful. Beside him, Charlie placed a hand on his arm, her voice filled with concern as she called his name. Priest Dan assured Silva that he could return with more questions anytime. His gaze then shifted, noting that he'd been wondering about Silva's hand. He asked if it was injured. Silva, caught off guard, stammered that he had just burned it a while ago. He seemed to accept the explanation, simply telling Silva to take care of himself. With a quiet intensity, Silva affirmed that he would. With their meeting concluded, the two departed. As they walked, Charlie apologized for having dragged him along for so long. Silva brushed it off, reminding her that she was the one who invited him, so it was no trouble. She then asked if their conversation had been about the vampire case. Silva confirmed it was, revealing that he's been troubled by a lingering wrong feeling ever since he defeated the demon. He pieced the information together in his mind. If that feeling was right, it meant there was a chance the vampire was actually a human who had been turned into a minion, one who might still be lurking somewhere in the city. An image of a cloaked figure flashed in his memory. The intensity of his thoughts brought him to a halt. Charlie's voice calling his name snapped him back to reality. He apologized for being lost in thought and, noticing the late hour, offered to walk her home. She asked if he was sure, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. With a sudden burst of energy, Silva grinned and declared that escort duty is also part of a soldier's duty. His cheerful response brought a soft smile to her face. As she looked at him, she thought to herself that, despite everything, she hadn't managed to tell him what she wanted to that day. As they walked, she gazed at a large, stately building, her thoughts still lingering on their earlier conversation. She wondered to herself if she would ever find the right moment to tell him what was truly on her mind. Meanwhile, back at the church, Priest Dan's expression was grim. A bead of sweat ran down his temple as he examined a piece of torn fabric, a dark, circular hole marring its surface. At a massive stone gate, a young guard with dark hair calls for the next person in line. He holds a clipboard and quill, diligently processing the endless queue of people waiting to enter the capital, wondering just how far the line extends. He reflects on the situation, realizing this is his first time working at the Southern Gate, and he had no idea it would be this busy. With frequent demon incidents causing staff shortages nearly everywhere, he resolves to fulfill his gatekeeping duties to the best of his ability. A troubling thought surfaces as he connects the dots. The exponential increase in demon cases and the recent vampire incident are playing out exactly like the main story of the game he knows. He gets the distinct feeling there has been a mishap in their plans. The realization sharpens into a dreadful possibility. He wonders with alarm if his own presence and actions have now become entangled in that very storyline. His internal monologue is abruptly cut short by a sharp voice calling out, "Hey!" He looks up from his work, startled by the sudden interruption. The voice belongs to a senior soldier with spiky, light-colored hair, who chides him for spacing out and demands he do his job. Flustered, the young guard apologizes and agrees, addressing the man as Mr. Crow. He watches the senior soldier, identifying him as Crow, a senior officer in charge of guarding the Southern Gate. He concedes that Crow has good looks, but his expression suggests there's more to him than that. His unspoken assessment is immediately proven correct. Crow turns his attention to a young woman in the queue, smoothly complimenting her as pretty and asking for a name. The woman shyly introduces herself as Yulia. From the side, the dark-haired guard thinks to himself that Crow's personality leaves much to be desired. Crow takes the young woman's hand, expressing his admiration for her name, Yulia, and asking what business brings her to the royal capital. Flattered, she explains that she has found a job as a staff member in a flower shop in a shopping district. As he hands Yulia her permit, Crow grins and tells her she's as pretty as a flower. In the background, the dark-haired guard watches with immense irritation, thinking that his superior is shamelessly hitting on girls during his duties. He irritably tells his senior officer to do his job faster. The officer, Crow, dismisses a traveler he is inspecting, telling the man that a mere newbie has no authority to give him orders. He internally fumes at Crow's nerve, considering him garbage and wishing he were working with Ma Dai instead. His thoughts are interrupted when a woman's voice calls out from the gate, looking for the gatekeeper. A wave of dread washes over him as he recognizes the voice. The armored woman, Commander Elda, approaches, explaining that she is looking for somebody. Crow immediately interjects, fawning over Commander Elda's beauty and offering his assistance. She pays him no mind, stating plainly that she's looking for a gatekeeper named Silva, prompting the man in question to try and slip away unnoticed. His escape is short-lived as Elda spots him. She quickly closes the distance, grabbing him and declaring that she has a favor to ask. Before he can protest, she announces she is borrowing him and begins dragging him toward the Knight's headquarters, leaving a bewildered Crow in her way. Now inside the commander's office at the Knight's headquarters, Elda gets straight to the point. She explains that although the recent vampire incident has been resolved, a new case has emerged, a kidnapping. All the victims are women, and their only lead is reports of a suspicious person wearing a black cloak. The mention of a black cloak triggers a vivid image in his mind of a shadowy, menacing figure. He voices his suspicion to Commander Elda, stating his belief that this new case is connected to the vampire incident. When she questions him, reminding him that he defeated the vampire, he admits that the victory felt strangely easy and lackluster. He elaborates on his theory, explaining that vampires possess the ability to create thralls. This leads him to the grim conclusion that the creature he slayed was likely just a subordinate, not the true master. The implication dawns on Elda. The real vampire is still at large. Silva's hand tightens into a fist as he is overcome with regret, believing that if he had only realized the truth sooner, he could have prevented the kidnappings from ever happening. His sharp agreement surprised Commander Elda. She had just explained that the vampire situation had worsened and asked for his help, but his immediate, forceful acceptance was unexpected. She noted that he was being awfully cooperative today, far more than usual. He brushed off her suspicion with a strained smile, insisting it was nothing strange. The truth, he claimed, was that he simply could not let someone else clean up his mess. Pleased by his newfound motivation, she declared herself psyched up and offered him a rolled-up scroll from her desk. She explained that since he had so kindly offered his help, he should take it, as it might prove to be a clue. He looked at it, puzzled. She clarified that it was the list of casualties from the vampire case. As he unrolled it, his eyes widened at the sheer number of names. Elda continued, explaining that besides the girls he had previously saved, other captives were now hospitalized in a clinic. She suggested he go there, reasoning that they might be able to provide some information. He immediately asked for the clinic's location. The name she gave him, the Rachel Clinic on the outskirts of town, visibly startled him. Elda elaborated on the clinic's doctor, Rachel Forsard. She described her as one of the conquerable characters of Briaz, and admitted she was a bit of a troublesome person. However, she added a crucial detail. Deepening one's bond with Rachel would lead to her selling healing items cheaply. He understood immediately and confirmed he was heading there. With a confident smile, Elda told him she was counting on it. He soon arrived at the clinic. As he walked through the entrance, a memory surfaced. He hadn't been to a clinic since saving the captive girls. The thought brought a foul sensation, and he grimaced, thinking to himself that the place still stank like hell. He stepped inside and called out, "Excuse me, Miss Rachel. Are you here?" His gaze swept over shelves lined with healing materials and medicine. His call was answered by a woman with long, reddish-brown hair, who adjusted her glasses as she appeared. She asked what he wanted, questioning if he was wounded or if someone was sick, though she quickly concluded he didn't look like either. As he looked up at her, a flicker of recognition crossed his mind. He felt he recalled her from somewhere. He expressed his surprise that she remembered him after only one meeting. Rachel confirmed his identity as the gatekeeper who had brought in the girls attacked by demons. She continued with a knowing smirk, explaining that of course she would remember him. He was, after all, with the top-grade hero, or, as she called her, the monster. He protested her choice of words, finding it awful to call Kagaya a monster. Ignoring his complaint, Rachel leaned in close, a lit cigarette between her fingers, and demanded to know his name. After he introduced himself as Silva, Rachel observed that he had an amusing body. Without another word, she bluntly ordered him to get undressed, leaving him utterly stunned. He stammered, asking for the point of undressing. Rachel simply stated that if he wanted her to hear him out, he had to comply. Now shirtless, Silva realized this must be Rachel's infamous bad habit. She confirmed his unspoken thought, explaining that she has a habit of undressing people to learn about them by inspecting their bodies, and impatiently told him just his upper clothes would suffice. Leaning in for a closer look, she made her assessment. He was the sort of person who could make himself look skinny while clothed. Her inspection complete, she told him he could get dressed again, claiming she now had a good idea about him. As he pulled his shirt back on, he questioned how a brief physical examination could reveal anything meaningful. She completely ignored his skepticism. Instead, she correctly deduced that he was not a knight, but a soldier. After he confirmed it, she simply remarked that his body was very amusing. A sinister shadow of her loomed as she mused aloud about dissecting his body later for a more thorough investigation. The suggestion horrified him, but but she quickly dismissed it as just a joke. He finally broaches the subject, explaining to Dr. Rachel that he wants to investigate the survivors of the vampire case. She turns to him, asking what, specifically, he needs from her. She seems skeptical, reminding him that the case was supposedly resolved and that she had already provided all information to the Knights. He presses on, revealing his suspicion that some vampires may still be alive and his desire to question the survivors directly. After a brief pause, her demeanor shifts. With a sharp, knowing look, she tells him she understands and agrees to his request. She then leads a frightened young girl from another room. The girl clings to Rachel, her eyes wide with fear. Silva immediately understands that his presence is terrifying her, a natural reaction to her trauma. To calm the child, Rachel explains that he is not a bad person, but a soldier of justice who protects people. He kneels to meet the girl's gaze, earnestly swearing that he will catch those who caused her such terrible fear and that he will protect her and everyone else. His heartfelt promise breaks through her fear, and she tearfully agrees to cooperate. As she lowers her hands, his attention is drawn to an unusual mark on her right hand. He points, asking what happened to it. A closer look reveals a peculiar, web-like bruise spreading across the back of her hand, an injury of a very strange shape. He gently asks if she remembers how she received the injury. With a troubled expression, she admits that she doesn't know, only that the mark was already there before the attack occurred. Her words give him pause. He falls silent, his gaze fixed on her hand as he processes this new, puzzling piece of information. The girl, now much calmer, thanks him for his kindness, telling him he was a great help. The three of them sit together, the initial questioning complete. He explains his conjecture to Dr. Rachel, stating his belief that the bruise is a marking left by the vampire. She concedes that his reasoning is sound, but reminds him that it's merely a hypothesis without proof. He agrees, listening as she considers that if his theory is correct, the mark could serve as a warning for those who have yet to be attacked. His spirits lifted, he bows and thanks Miss Rachel for her cooperation. Now confident he has a solid lead to pursue. She smiles faintly, her eyes nearly closed, and expresses her satisfaction at having been of assistance. Her demeanor changes to one of playful avarice as she declares her fee for assisting his investigation is 60,000 gold. Stunned by the amount, he can only watch as she clarifies she is joking, but makes a morbid counteroffer. In exchange for her help, she wants permission to dissect his body upon his death, unwilling to let such a valuable sample go to waste. Flustered, he can only mutter that he will consider it. Elsewhere, a young woman with dark pigtails tends to a bed of white flowers. She looks up as Priest Dan approaches, welcoming him and commenting on the beauty of the blossoms. As he reaches for one of the flowers, he pricks his finger on a thorn and yelps in pain. The young woman laughs and apologizes for the mishap. His attention is then captured by her hand. The girl follows his gaze and explains the bruise appeared yesterday, attributing it to her own clumsiness and assuming she must have hit it on something without realizing. His expression turns deadly serious. He warns her that what she dismisses as a mere bruise is, in fact, the devil's curse, a mark that will bring her misfortune if ignored. The girl is visibly frightened by his declaration. The priest urges her to come with him to the church immediately to have the curse removed before it is too late. Desperate, she agrees and pleads for him to save her as he leads the way.